Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Town of McCandless, December 6th, 2022, and presumably the last of the Planning Commission meetings for this year. Number one item we have is a continued review of the Baylor Plan Preliminary Final Subdivision Land Development Application on Willoughby Road, with new lots to be located on Harmony Drive. We've had some of this before us before. What do we have, a presentation? Continued.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Dan Harrison from Tate Engineering. I've been here before with Brian Bowler, the owner, and with Chris Sinker. He's from Executive Developers. And he's helping move the process along with the development side of things. So this is like I said, a 4-lot subdivision that has been looked at a few times before. And we're still trying to finish up the comments and I think mainly get some erosion control things. We're going to talk about, I guess, the dedication and possible cartway expansion and some sanitary issues that we're still discussing. So we have a gateway letter that we're continuing to move through, and we have addressed some comments, still have some outstanding, of course, and a couple new ones. I think the major things are, like we said, mostly sanitary sewer related still.
Okay.
So, we're working with MTSA. We've had site meetings with them, approached neighbors to talk about possible directions that the sanitary lines are going to run, things like that. Maybe you guys can expand if you have any questions on it, but and we're still working toward that.
Have you officially submitted this planning module?
No, we've not, because we don't know which direction the sanitary line is going to run formally. So we have paperwork, 95% completed. It just until we know formally which direction the line is going to run, we don't want to submit paperwork yet.
So with regards, if I can jump in, so
Jump,
with regards
please.
to the road, the last time we discussed it, we asked you to go out and measure Harmony Drive
Yes.
and determine whether it did need to be wide, what it would need to meet town spec.
Sure.
So are you saying that it needs 1.5 feet wide? To be
Yes, we have a 22.5 foot cartway width on there.
Okay,
I just wasn't sure exactly if we have to provide the full 1.5 on our side, if it would be half of that to kind of make up. I'm guessing, I think the standard is 24 feet for this type of road.
there's wedge curbs and 11-foot lanes, I believe.
Okay.
So yeah, there would be, it'd be a total of 24.
Sure, right.
So right now there's 22.5 instead of 24, so it's a
Correct.
1.5 short.
Yes.
So your options would be to either provide for that widening or to ask the town for a modification on that
Okay.
particular section of the road. By the municipality's planning code, you're required to bring the road up, half of the road up, your half of the road up to speed. You don't have to do anything with the other half.
So it'd be basically 0.75.
Right. So, yes,
Including
So,
a wedge.
whether that's worthwhile doing or not, I don't know whether it's worth it to try to just put a sliver fill in there for that little bit of. I personally think the road is in good shape. I'm more concerned about what the road will look like when all of the utilities are completed.
Mhm.
That's why I added a note on there that after you guys do trench completion, that the road is going to need overlaid in the vicinity of those lots, because I think there's going to be so many utility lines crossing there. It's going to be like Swiss cheese.
Sure. Now, would that be just kind of in the areas that utility lines would be running? Would they have to?
No, I think you would have to mill and overlay the road from
From
the
length.
beginning of the lots to the end of lots.
Okay.
I think that's where you're gonna end up with your utility connections by the time you make them. But again, the plan's not clear yet. I don't know at this point in time, if you're asking the town for approval, I have to make sure I have notes on the plan to cover any situation that we run into.
Yeah, and I mean, at least from our perspective, like. My particular concern, aside from everything that Dan just said in engineer speak, is. we need to know what is actually proposed to be taken over as a public cartway, whether it's, 0.75 or a whole foot and a half, whatever. Like, I have concerns about sending a plan to council where the note is essentially, this might be something that we ask you to take over. That's very unusual for us.
So I guess we would propose 0.75 then to bring that half of it up to speed if we're not requesting modification. I'm not sure what you guys,
I don't see why we would need to do any modifications. Yeah.
okay. So I think that would be the way we would,
I mean, what's your opinion, Ardan?
Well,
What's preferable?
I mean, we already own the right of way where it is. I don't think we need any more right of way.
Okay, so no more dedication.
No
is
more
necessary.
dedication of right of way. And then the question is it worth it to 3/4 of a foot of road to add to the road? And from what the site visit's been so long that I made up, I almost forget what the road looks like, but I know it's in pretty good shape.
Mhm.
And I think for just 4 lots, it doesn't make sense to do, I would concur that it isn't worth just doing a little sliver widening there of just a foot along the edge of the road. I think you'd be better off requesting the council that it's not going to make any substantial difference in the operation of the road
sure.
and make the request for a modification.
I suppose even with that note that would be added that, we would say that the pavement will be brought up to good condition anyway, so it kind of.
The
pointless
paving
to-
is in good condition now.
Well, after utility.
Yeah,
work.
but after utility work
Yes.
is done, that's more of my concern that we don't end up with a road that's, that's
Cut up.
substandard when the development is done. That's my experience with these type of things. So
Okay.
that's more important to me than 3/4 of a foot of widening.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I just kind of wanted to clarify if it was being required to have a dedication or the roadway for sure being brought up to standard, or if that was something that we'll request a modification for. So,
How many times can it's kind of road? I would assume
each individual utility connection, the gas line.
yeah, they'll roll under the road. They won't cut the road. Like, I don't anticipate the road looking like Switch cheese by any means. A lot of the utility companies will roll underneath the road.
You don't know that. I mean, what I don't want is, I don't want to be in a situation where I'm begging you to pave the road at the end of the day. I'm not going to do that. I think that if you're building a plan of lots off an existing road, it's already been improved, it's a town road, we have to maintain it. We expect it to be in good condition when it's done. You can go up there and take all that dirt off there. There's going to be a ton of trucks on that road coming down there, turning and articulating in the road. If it's hot, it might muck the pavement up. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen. Granted, during lot construction, I've seen it, so all I'm saying is, we could require you to widen the road. I'm saying, I don't agree with that. I would rather you spend the money in fixing the road up when it's done and the trenches are all done. We don't even have a plan that shows where the sanitary sewer is going to go. The trench might go right down the center, the sanitary sewer might go right down the center of the road. We don't know that yet. So, and then there's water lines and you know what I mean? So I think you're much better off just, putting in the cost of the overlay. The overlay is only 1.5 inches. All you have to do is mill down 1.5 inches and overlay after the trenches are fixed. It's not that big of a deal. Everybody's happy at the end of the day. Your customers are happy. The road's not messed up. So it's my advice.
Does that sound reasonable?
To me, I mean, if you guys.
I just never had to do that before, but I mean.
Typically most, and I didn't have our full trench paving detail, but our McCandless detail might require that when you run parallel to a road, you have to replace the trench, and then you have to go a distance of at least 30 feet on each side of where that parallel line is, and you have to mill and overlay that whole section of road. That's the way most utility trench restoration ordinances are. So at the end of the day, it might be required anyway. I'm just saying, let's just get it out front.
You're saying, I mean, this is, at least in the staff parlance, it's usually called a curb to curb ordinance.
Yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, and that's. If you haven't run into it, I'm surprised, because in the last like 5-10 years, those have become much more common in municipalities that tend to get ripped up by the utility companies doing work. So,
I mean-
I wouldn't consider that unusual at this point.
the last plan that we finished, the last subdivision plan that we finished ran the sanitary sewer offsite. Forget the name of the plan right now. And they ran the sewer right down the center of the street and they fixed the trench and they overlaid the whole road. So,
Yeah, I think kind of an annoying complication is not knowing for certain where the sanitary sewer is gonna go after all this time. I mean, we've had discussions, we've had meetings with neighbors, we've had meetings with MTSA out on the site. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Brian has approached neighbors about different directions to go.
What's the issue been? Is it a question of cost or is it MTSA preference or what's anything?
We were just trying to go the easiest route.
MTSA's preference is to go to the neighbors,
Gotcha.
which makes a heck of a lot of sense. I can completely see where it's coming from. However, we need to get approval from the neighbors.
Right, you'd have to get
Brian's been working
easements
on it.
presumably or
So
something.
that's been our challenge. And Brian's met with a number of them, and we were kind of hoping. Some of them would kind of come back to us and consider, it, but we're not getting any positive
Yeah,
feedback from them yet.
so our next step is to get back with Ray.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's in my mind, number one, we gotta nail that, like, again, we gotta get this resolved and final, and then we can do the modules and move forward with everything else.
I think that we're good on the engineering comment side. If you all have any questions.
Any questions among the commission?
I have one.
Karen?
Regarding the sidewalks. As they appear on the plan, they're outside of a road right away, they're on private property. Is the assumption that each individual homeowner is gonna build them, and how are they gonna tie them in? And what is the requirement that they build them?
I think that was gonna be part of the bonding for construction.
yeah,
funds.
it'll have to be a part of the bond for construction. It's a public improvement.
So it's going to be done completely, because it wasn't. clear.
Well,
The
they
developer
may
doing-
may only build them as the houses are being built, but they'll be guaranteed to be put in no matter what.
Okay,
Ultimately, all four homes will have it in front.
Yes.
And that's our typical, as things.
sorry, I forgot there was a developer now. I thought it was individual lots being sold, so.
And I assume you're going to pay a fee in lieu of the rec area?
I
Or
believe
four
so,
lots.
Yeah,
Yes.
Any other comments? Okay, it sounds like we're not ready to proceed.
Yeah.
Are we tabling this once more?
So I'm just gonna make a general comment. I think we're in a better position than we were over the summer with this for sure. I'm glad, Chris, that you're involved now. That definitely kind of builds out, the skill set for this, but I am curious how long we think the sewer situation is going to go on, because at this point we are on the clock for review. And I mean, we could put you on extension again, but is that really the most, or do we think we're gonna get it done within a month? Really is the question.
So on mine, I 100% agree with you. I feel like this is, as soon as we get through the sewer, everything else is trivial, I think, at this point. But, working through the sewer, it is working our way down to Victory Lane. Ray, the last we've met with Ray, not impossible, right? But there's some work in, and within the next 8 days, we can have it wrapped up and back, because just with us and Ray at this point.
sure. I mean, we can get everything into Ray and hope that we at least have feedback that, this is the way that we're going to proceed for sure. We'll have the planning module submitted, that sort of thing.
Okay,
It kind of seems like we've struck out a few times, and alternatives to try to avoid that.
so
So,
you're only 30 days, ish, whatever, you're a month in right now. So that at least puts us in a position where we can get you back before the commission in January and not have to worry about an extension if it's ready to move forward at that point. I just want to make sure that we're all cognizant of those deadlines. And, I'd rather, again, see this paused if for some reason MTSA is going to take a while than do extension. So just so we keep our eye on that going forward.
That's one of the
I think that's definitely the big hurdle to get through. It has been for a long time. And, we've tried to find different ways around it and so far have struck out. So.
All right, any other comments? Do we need a motion to table or we'll just table it?
I think since we had a tentative motion on the agenda period, it would be best to just do an official table.
Okay, can I have a motion, someone to table this until next month? Moved, second? Second.
Yep, okay. Who wants to be number two? Because I heard a couple. Okay.
Alice, number 2. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Thank
All
you.
right, we'll see you next month
Thank you.
for the last time.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, thank you.
Item number 2, the Williams Hufnagel subdivision application on Guyton Road. This is a start of a new, effort, so we need a motion to accept the application for review. Would someone offer such a motion? Sean moves, any second?
You know what, before we do this, actually, are you Brian? Yeah, kind of unusual, but. Just gonna mute whoever that is for a moment. Mike, I'm guessing you're related to this app, so I'll bring it back on after we don't have the echo. So Brian and I communicated this morning. From what I understand, there's a bit of a change in the way that we're approaching this plan. So before we take the application for review, I think maybe we should explain and then we can decide whether we want to put things on the
Okay.
clock or maybe wait until next month.
Great.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Brian Kelly. I'm with LK Land Services. Working with the Williamses, they had proposed the subdivision that is before you, where they were creating a lot in the back that they were going to build a future home on. So basically the original lot 1 out along Guyton Road. Their neighbor, Mrs. Hufnagel, was providing them a little piece of her property so that the lot was feasible to build on. And then they ultimately were going to create the lot 2 in the back. As of right now, they changed they were gonna build on lot 1 out in the front and leave the garage there, so it wasn't sitting there by itself as an accessory structure. And now they've decided that they want to build on the back. Now, so basically I'm pulling off that plan and just submitting a consolidation plan to transfer the little piece from Mrs. Hufnagel to their property. So that'll all be one piece of ground. I assume at some future date, they may want to do something with the front and cut that off because the stream basically, splits the lot anyway. But that is the intention of basically me being here tonight, was to explain to you folks that they're basically want to pull that application or modify that application prior to that. And my only other comment was that as far as the development of that property, I understand. I mean, we're far from that. There's nothing. I mean, I have nothing with ENS. I didn't do a stormwater, didn't do any of that because we were doing the subdivision plan first. And then when they were ready to develop something, we were going to develop something. So to address any of the comments that were made regarding design of the cul-de-sac or turnaround or whatever, none of that's been done. Because we weren't in the development stage. They were going to build a house out front. I was going to work on development of the back. And so since they changed all that, I just want to get the consolidation hopefully on the agenda for next month or whenever we can. Get that through, get the land stuff taken care of. Put Miss Hufnagel at ease and, have that taken care of and then move forward from there.
Did you develop the home that was built back on Stage Court or Stage? Okay.
Yeah.
That was just built independently?
Yeah.
Okay. Just for my information, because I know the area pretty well. Ultimately, you think there will be how many homes built in that space? Just one and all of that? property? Okay.
And I mean, that's consistent. So I have some familiarity with this application, or at least versions of it, because we had them come before the zoning hearing board at some point. Because they wanted to get. Basically, since their zoning code is a bit unclear with building lines and setbacks and how wide things have to be at lots. Past practice has always been whatever the lot width is that abuts the public right of way has to be the lot width minimum, not just the building setback, but it had been enforced as where the lot meets the right of way. And so this was under 90 feet. So they came for a variance. got it at the zoning hearing board, because I mean, it was evident that this was supposed to turn into a cul-de-sac or something someday, and it just didn't. Now, I do know that the property owner, the Williamses, I guess. I mean, they've expressed to me since I first started talking to them, which was well over a year ago, that they did just want to build one, their own home, basically on this lot. So that tracks. However, what I was not anticipating from those conversations, and I mean, things, once you get into the planning stage, I understand things change, they come up, so not that anyone did anything wrong here, but I didn't know that we were looking at potentially dedicating this hammerhead as actual town right of way. For whatever reason, I was under the impression that it was just gonna be a private.
I assumed that it had to be. The prior plan that was recorded that said any developer of that lot had to basically build at the town specifications and so it may end up not, I mean, it may have to be a cul-de-sac because that would be what the town would require, and that's whatever it needs to be. They would prefer that hammerhead for some reason, but I mean,
Yeah.
whatever you guys would accept and is,
And this is just me spitballing, like, I don't want to speak for anyone else, because again, this was kind of just something that came up, and I didn't get to talk to our public works director about it, but I would think if we're taking something over, that we would prefer cul-de-sac to hammerhead, whereas I think the hammerhead conversation occurred, like I said, quite some time ago when I was talking to the property owner about it being on private property and how much did they have to do to build out a driveway. I think it's been a
And
while.
I think they were concerned about creating an opportunity to have get more traffic back there. Like it's only, basically the two houses that would use that, three
Mhm.
houses. And, they were just, if you put a big road in there, people are gonna come back and drive around and,
Right.
then not that, I don't know if that had carried any weight or not, but we're ways from the development. I mean, because I have a lot of work to do to get to that point, and frankly, I just would like to get the subdivision plan, just basically that consolidation with that small piece from Mrs. Huffnagel done. And I get a packet together for January, like to submit for further review as far as a lot development goes. 'Cause I know that they're anxious to get moving, but I have to look at DEP, because if they wouldn't, they could all just come off of Guyton, but,
Mhm.
I have to get an NPDS permit, or at least a general permit to get it through across the stream. I don't even know what that
Right.
stream is. It's not listed anywhere. It's not a listed stream. It's not,
Yeah,
it's
from
5.4 miles from the watershed that it feeds to, that it doesn't.
this was before my time, but from my I mean, it was like right before I started here. My understanding was for some reason DEP got involved and that became some sort of regulated waterway. Like this stream encroachment setback situation seems to be relatively recent.
Yeah, because
Like,
they
it
had
wasn't
changed,
here.
it was originally 50 foot on each side, and then when Huffnagels did the last subdivision they got a variance or some kind of something from DEP to allow it to be less,
Okay.
which I can't find any record of. So you had that here at the township level.
I have a file that is labeled with this property, but I mean, like what I just said is about what I was able to understand from it. So I'll look again, but
And I didn't want to, hold up the meeting time. And a lot of that comes back to the development portion of this versus the subdivision, which is a simple lot consolidation.
yeah, I mean, so if it's a lot consolidation, I mean, I think, because this was, I know you emailed me probably as soon as you knew, so,
Yeah.
again, I appreciate that, but I just haven't had the chance to really consult or look into this too much. If it's a lot consolidation, I perhaps feel a little softer on this because, right now it's this whole one lot, like lot number 1 and number 2 is one lot right now that in theory could be built upon. But if we're doing, so if we're just adding something to it that's not creating a new buildable lot, all right, then, at least that's a conversation that I'd like to have with our legal counsel. If it's a subdivision that's showing a public improvement though.
Right.
Knowing that we're probably gonna have to think about stormwater or an inlet or something like that, I would just hesitate to comfortably approve that. I don't know. Dan, what do you think?
If it's a barks like a duck, it's a duck. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's.
Public improvement usually puts you over the line into a full.
And that doesn't necessarily, doesn't have to happen with the consolidation because I have frontage on Guyton, so it doesn't matter.
Right,
And they have a variance anyway for the other frontage, but we're not using that. I mean, as far as this
right,
consolidation goes, that doesn't matter.
right. The
and that-
reason that the frontage variance occurred was because there was an assumption that
That
this. would-
law would be subdivided.
So your new plan will just consolidate the property, it won't create any new lots, is that correct?
That's correct. It's just, I mean,
Okay, if that's the case.
That's,
then
it's more comfortable.
That's
But
true.
I thought you were still taking a piece of land. Lot 3A
That's what-
is still
that-
gonna be,
that's the consolidation. Their other property is all one big chunk from Guyton the whole way back. And all they're gonna do is consolidate a little piece from Mrs. Huffman.
because it wasn't clear on here. that
Labeling
3A
it 3A through. us
Yeah,
a little bit,
it looked like a separate lot that wasn't
Yeah.
gonna meet
I
anything.
had to give
except
it a number
right
to
of way.
add it in the table down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I
that's how-
understand what the comment was.
Eventually,
Yeah,
but I.
And I actually did, when I started addressing his comments before, they called me and told me they were changing everything, so. you know.
Yes, so, okay, I like,
That makes it my.
Yeah.
let's, if you can get a revision in by the 2-week revision deadline with the lot consolidation, that'll give us some time to chat with the town attorney,
Yeah.
think about.
And
it
I
a
can get
little
a
more.
table Friday. I want
Um,
to. No.
Yeah, because if you're not creating any new lots, like I said, I
Right.
think we have a better conversation here, but either way, at some point, for the property owner's understanding, if they are going to be coming off of the stage court entrance here and adding additional pavement.
Yeah, that still
You
needs to
know.
be worked out, discussed,
Yeah.
talked about, fixed,
Yeah.
I get it.
So, it looks like we've got the property owners on Zoom right now, so if they wanted to chime in or had anything to say, feel free to unmute yourselves.
About
Go ahead,
the
Mel.
hammerhead, if now I am totally opposed to a cul-de-sac just because, like he had said, a cul-de-sac is an open invitation for everything. People to drive through, it's a much larger space, whereas a hammerhead still serves the purpose of a turnaround for snow removal to be plowed to. It still serves the purpose of exactly what it is intended to be used for without encroaching so much on the land. And it also doesn't look like an open invitation for everybody to play in and drive through and park a car and.
Well, so, okay, if the assumption is that people aren't supposed to be driving on it publicly, it should not be in a public right of way. So we should think about that.
That, I mean, and that could be discussed from we need to look at that old plan and see. I mean, honestly, legally, I don't know that we have that option.
I mean, it's over, from my understanding, the stage court right of way is over 21 years old. So typically that becomes like a paper street, whatever was left of it, and our right to improve it publicly is voided unless granted again.
So
But-
theoretically, it would be a driveway.
I mean,
Basically, yes.
and I mean, that would make them, I mean, that would thrill them to death. If they didn't have
Yeah, I would love just to have a driveway.
just added, because they have the variance for the frontage, so that wouldn't matter.
So, well, here's the thing, right now, it's my understanding that Public Works just pushes the snow to a pile at the end of stage court. So if you want us to plow you in.
Well,
Which is why we were gonna do. the
I'm thinking the
hammerhead.
homeowners would love to work with you on having a spot dedicated for
Yeah.
that snow removal. And it could even be like,
Well, that was a hammerhead, it was just,
yeah,
no, and again, it's been a while, I've had a couple conversations.
but
over
we could
the
make it a little
years,
bioretention
you know.
swale real nice and you can put the snow in there and it slowly melt and back into the charge of water.
I mean, I think this is something that isn't a conversation
Dead
that
end
we
thing.
can just.
Right,
make a
and it's not
decision
something
on Now.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were some things that I was not anticipating on this point showed up, so.
But if you're the commissioner, okay with getting this consolidation in and done, take care of, I mean, it's a separate issue because it needs to happen for them to do anything with the frontage later because the lot's not
Yeah.
sized appropriately with the setback requirement.
Again, I do think this is something that I would just like to talk to the town attorney offline about
Absolutely.
further, but I'm more comfortable with that consolidation. Perhaps if you all were willing to consider a condition of approval that, like, before anything is built on this lot, we need to figure out the access, make sure it works for what Public Works needs, and make sure that the stormwater is going to be addressed before anything is built.
And
That's
and honestly, I
more
mean,
realistic.
I can't speak for him, but I think he would be happy with not having a big roadway there that's gonna be right up against his property
My
too.
only problem is that
Yes.
the drawing that's submitted right here, that hammerhead is 20 feet from the back window of my back bedroom. that was the problem they had when they came in and looked at this drawing, and from what he said, it kind of just sketched something in
Just-
there with no regard to
The-
where our house is and what's.
Real quick, because I know you and I spoke on the phone, but since this is a public meeting, I just want to get your name and address for the record.
It's Rich Doyle,
Mhm.
and I'm at 1846 Stage Court.
1546 State Court. Thank you, Rich.
Just the whole history of this lot and the hammerhead and where it came from and everything. I had an opportunity to buy this lot a while back when it came available. And to do almost the same thing that the Williams were going to do and subdivide it and do something else. It came down here, I then met with Bruce. We walked through this, told us because of what's on our deed and what's everything else. It's written right in on our deed or our property that if that lot's subdivided, Stage Court has to be finished.
Hmm.
So he's the one that told us that, well, maybe instead of a cul-de-sac, it'd be easier to put a hammerhead. So that's
Oh,
where.
okay.
And I relayed that to the Williamses because they're great people and I want them to be able to be great neighbors.
Mhm.
I just don't want the snow plow to leave the snow 20 feet outside my window.
Right.
And that's the only reason I came to the meeting. I hope they build their house. I hope they get everything they want. I just think that design needs to be different than what's shown. I think like to come here tonight and you guys approve a drawing that looks like that when I know it's not right. It definitely needs some stormwater work and a bunch of other stuff. So that's the only comment.
Sounds like we should wait for better information to come before us.
Yeah, I mean, this functionally, this plan is being withdrawn but resubmitted as a lot consolidation is what's happening here, right? Okay, so we don't need to accept this for review because you've gone on the record that it's withdrawn. Was there anything else? I mean, I think we kind of have the marching orders for what you all need to do, but just because we have the property owners on the line, wanted to give them the opportunity if they had anything else or any questions they wanted to ask at this stage.
No, no other questions for me.
Do you have any?
No questions? Doesn't sound like it.
Okay.
Okay.
Or just if there's any opportunity I have to look with you or look in that file to see, or if you can, to see if there's anything on the, even a permit number or something to go to DEP with, because I have nothing to even talk to them about.
Yeah, now that Rich, I appreciate the additional context you gave us there, because this sounds like this is a little bit of a Bruce file that I need to go digging for. Like I said, I've seen something really brief, which is some photos of the property, but I don't know how much else he left.
Okay,
You know,
I
from the
I
work
appreciate
through.
your time. Thank you. very
I'll
much.
check it out.
Thank you. Item number 3, I understand you need a bit of explanation, RJ, before we get into this.
Yes, so this one is a Starbucks land development application. We have got one of the applicants representatives here, Bill Moldovan. Did I say that right? All right. He's from Kinley Horn, and we also have Sue Federico on the line from Starbucks Corporate. So this is a little bit of an unusual situation with the land development application. Typically for an existing property where what they're really just doing is changing the use for the most part. Depending on exactly what how much they'd be expanding, the building footprint, which here is not really occurring. They're just adding an outdoor patio at this point. It would normally be under the threshold, which it would not trigger a full planning commission and town council approval process. It would
changing access.
it would still be submission for administrative review, because the qualifications that we use are percentage of square footage, essentially for the building footprint, square footage or percentage of use. And a couple other weird things like acreage that would apply here, but if they add the outdoor patio, it triggers the threshold for expansion of use. But they had mentioned at the zoning hearing board that, if that was really the trigger, they could pull out the outdoor patio. So anyway, the reason that they came before the zoning hearing board is because our D development district, which mostly you all probably think of as the McCandless Crossing district, because that's functionally what it was used for. They actually, when they zoned that, I think back in maybe the 80s, extended it up McKnight Road. perhaps just took a lot of the abutting parcels in it. I'm not totally sure, what the logic was, but this parcel that this building is on, which some of you probably are familiar with, is the former PNC across the street, Blazer Drive from the Giant Eagle. For some reason, that little strip of property was zoned as D development, even though the rest of the shopping center is C3. C3 would typically permit an establishment like a Starbucks. D development only permits commercial that is an office when it's attached to a very large development, such as, for example, McCandless Crossing, that has a lot of office space. That is how that zoning code was written at the time. So because the bank is considered a commercial use that is not just permitted by right in the D development district, even though it was there before they implemented that district, it's a legally non-conforming use. And so to do anything that isn't either an office or attached to a very large office development is also a non-conforming use. And our code and the state generally provide for a process which you can go to a zoning hearing board and request a legal change from one non-conforming use to another. It's very convoluted. Don't worry, it won't make it into the new ordinance. But in the yes, it will be. But so the zoning hearing board ultimately decided that, the criteria that they evaluate that use change on is it in keeping with the character of the surrounding area? And it very clearly was part of the shopping center, which would be zoned to permit this by right normally. However, because there is a little bit of a change in the access, change in the flow, it's a drive-through. Everybody likes Starbucks. We know it's going to be busy. The zoning hearing board did put a condition on that approval that regardless of what they were doing with the outdoor patio, they still needed to come through us in town council. So that is why they are before you today. This is a very minor plan in terms of land development, because they're not adding impervious surface that triggers stormwater. They're not doing grading or anything like that. But we're still reviewing it through this process due to the zoning hearing board's request.
Okay,
So here we are.
thank you. That helps.
Thank you.
Bill,
This is-
Take
Appreciate it.
it away.
Well, do we need a motion first?
Oh, excuse me, you're right. We do need to do a motion to accept.
All right, we'll accept, I need a motion from the commission to accept. From Al, motion, second, second from Ann. All in favor? All opposed? Been accepted for review. That leads us to the presentation. Now you can tell us what it's going to do.
Thank you. My name's Bill Moldovan. I'm with Kinley Horn. We're the engineer for Starbucks Coffee Company. I'll be here tonight to walk you through the plan on the site, and Miss Sue Federico, as Miss Susko mentioned, will be on the call to answer any questions that you have about logistics, operations, for the proposed Starbucks drive-through only store. Is it best if I share my screen?
Yeah, so did you want me to do it or did you want to do it? Because I can make you co-host if you have your stuff pulled up.
Everything's here. I could share mine and I'd have the PDFs up if you'd like.
You can do that now.
Just a little bit of history. I know Ms. Suska went through a lot of it. We did receive a comment letter from Gateway Engineers dated November 22nd. We did make a revised submission with revised plans, some supplemental data in the form of an Alta survey prepared by a licensed surveyor in the state of Pennsylvania, and a comment response letter.
And that just came in yesterday, so that would not have been in your paper packets, but I have the files, and if they're not on the Dropbox, I'll put them on there.
And with that said, I do feel comfortable that the items in the Gateway comment letter were sufficiently addressed. I do have a few items that I'd like to discuss with the commission tonight to make sure that, one, we're comfortable that we have met or are on the way to meeting the engineer's comments, and then two, get a little bit of feedback from you. I just want to take a quick second and talk about the parcel in general. It's a 3.3 acre parcel North is on the top of the screen here. So it stretches along the entire length of Route 19 from the intersection of Blazer Drive to the next intersection to the west. So although it's 3.3 acres, we're only looking at impacting our limited disturbances 10,000 square feet. It's under the threshold that would require stormwater management. So I think it's important to note that there is a riparian buffer area and water course coming through pretty much everything but 0.6 to 0.7 acres of the developed area on the eastern side of the site. And I'm just going to flip to the site plan. I think it's probably the most relevant. If you have questions that I can answer on any other plan sheet, I'd be glad to. This plan, just quickly to talk about the hatches and the patterns so that you understand what you're looking at. There's a gray stipple in a lot of the parking area and the drive-through lane from the bank, as well as this access closest to the intersection of Blazier and Route 19. That stipple indicates existing pavement to remain. It'll be milled and resurfaced, but that is you can see kind of the outline or the shape of the existing parking area. The dark gray hatch is proposed asphalt. So what we've done, the existing bank use, the entrance to the bank was from this location. You either went to the drive-through teller or you came to a parking area on the west side of the site. That parking area was angled parking. It was a one-way circulation pattern, and you exited back onto Blazier Drive to the west. We are flipping that vehicular circulation pattern so that we've got an entrance and exit to the west, and then a controlled access to the east with what we're calling a bailout lane if somebody needs to leave the drive-through queue to get back onto Blazier Drive before going through and picking up their order. We are proposing two-way traffic within the proposed parking lot. We did receive a variance along with the non-conforming use variance. We requested a variance from the parking requirement from 17 to 14 spaces.
And I do want to note, because this is kind of I don't want to say unusual, it's a newer concept, I think, that a lot of these drive-through stores are doing since, the pandemic. The reasoning that the zoning hearing board had in granting that was there's not supposed to be people that are sitting around at this location. You can walk in, get your coffee and leave, or maybe sit on the patio. And the spots that are available for customer parking are time limited. So really the point is you're not supposed to have people sitting in this parking lot for any extended period of time. So.
Now, earlier you called it a drive-through only, but it's really not. You can walk in and get it, or you can drive through.
You can walk in and get it, but you cannot sit down inside. So it is a drive-through only. There's no inside seating. That's Starbucks terminology. There is a 150 square foot area inside the building that, yes, you can park your vehicle, walk inside, place an order, and leave.
And the patio concept is out?
The patio concept is in. It is right in this location. There are 4 tables with 4 seats.
Okay, so that confuses me. They're going to sit there, obviously, for some time.
If they would like, they can sit there. Yes. The approach is to have a multiple mode of transportation for these new stores. So although the patio's there, I think historically Starbucks is seeing it as an amenity. People that walk to the store, people that bike to the store have a place to sit But historically, what they're seeing is people are walking in, placing an order. If they're not going through the drive-through, most are placing an order, getting back in their cars and leaving. So there was a bit of discussion regarding the parking and whether or not we could anticipate that we would need additional parking based on the fact that there's 16 seats in the patio area. I just ask that you accept at least testimony from me or discussion from me and Ms. Federico to convince you that that is for multiple modes of transportation. So we have included a sidewalk to the intersection of Blazer and Route 19. I know there's residential on the opposite side of Route 19. In talking with the township in our pre-application meeting, it was discussed that that's something that the township wants to see, is that connectivity. So we do anticipate that outdoor patio would be used for people that walk and bike.
It's fairly evident from the plan that the configuration of the parking and its location with the building, the fact that you have to walk across drives, you have quite a not a particularly pedestrian friendly environment from parking spaces, excuse me. So it is intended that this is a high percentage drive-through.
It is,
Yeah.
it is. Just getting back to the site plan, as Ms. Susko mentioned, there are going to be dedicated spaces, time dedicated spaces for people that are just there to walk in and leave. There's 4 of those spaces right next to the accessible space. And then part of the discussion with the zoning hearing board was to add dedicated employee spaces as far away from the building as possible to allow patrons to get as close as possible to the building.
Are the employee spaces part of the 14?
They are.
How many
And
people work in a store like that?
Sue, do you want to answer that question? How many people work in a store like this?
Yeah, at any given time, we'll have 6 employees at our peak times. Our peak times are 6 to 10 a.m. And then there's another uptick, usually from 1 to 4.
Okay.
We have 12 queuing spaces. We did present some of Starbucks methodologies and some of their studies in regards to these stores. Ideally, they want to have 12 queuing spaces. So there's a reason for that to increase efficiency and allow the people inside the store to create the orders, have longer time between the time that a patron would place the order at the order board and then pick up. We are removing the canopy over the existing bank drive-through. So that canopy will be removed. There will be a small canopy that projects out of the pickup window, but that may be a foot or 2 just to cover the transaction from the vehicle. Like I said, we have provided a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk to the right of way, to the PennDOT right of way, PennDOT and Blazer Drive right of way. One of the comments that we did receive from the engineer was in regards to the existing entrance proposed exit. We have signage that says do not enter. We've got pavement markings that say do not enter. We're striping that area. There was a comment to provide a barrier, a physical barrier. We've been balancing that comment with our discussions with Mr. Jeff Wisner, Fire Marshal, to understand how they would access the site. And the conclusion that we came to, and we'd hope that the Planning Commission and Town Council and engineer would accept it, is to place plastic delineators along the edge of this striping. We had it at 6 foot on center, and those are in the revised plans that we submitted yesterday. They're typical to what you'd see along a bike lane on a roadway that's divided from 3 foot high plastic. They're mounted to the ground with rubber gaskets and sunk with fasteners, but it would allow the fire truck to pull over top if they need to get to the site. The fire marshal reviewed our plans. He's accepted through email the review. In terms of fire safety, we're showing the ability to access the site through the western entrance and get to the western side of the building. We're also showing access in the eastern exit only to get to the eastern side of the building. The fire truck cannot make it around the existing drive-through lane as it exists today. He did state that if there was a fire and they needed to access the northern side of the building along McKnight Road, they would stop on McKnight Road just like they would today.
And
So
I can verify that's accurate because I had the same discussion with him.
Wouldn't they have to cross that creek though? The creek, wouldn't the creek
No.
separate,
Not so,
or does the creek go
the
underground?
creek
somewhere?
goes underground.
yeah, it
okay.
crosses.
Here.
They would be coming through like right up against where
Yeah.
that drive-through vent
Okay.
is, yeah.
All right.
So a few of the comments that came in that we do have questions, I'd like some clarification. A photometric plan. We realize it's a requirement of the ordinance. We're using existing lights. Part of our discussion with the zoning hearing board was to as Ms. Susko said, was to provide testimony and show that the proposed use had no greater detriment to public health, safety, and welfare, lighting, noise than the existing use. Our plan was to reuse those lights, relocating them about 4 feet, 5 feet from where they're located right now. As you could see, right now they're behind the curb. 2 lights on this portion of the parking lot, 1 light here. I understand the requirement and looking for the commission's thoughts on whether that should be a component that we submit in order to gain approval, or if, because we are using existing lights that have been approved in the past, that portion of the zoning ordinance may not be required. That's one. And I'm just going to go through the other 3. Landscaping, we are on a 3.3 acre site. Like I said, there's a significant portion of this site that has trees, shrubs, riparian buffer yards. We were not planning on proposing any additional landscape except for in the new islands that we're placing for the drive-through lane and adjacent to the outdoor patio. We have 46 shrubs. The parking lot requirement comes out to 32, so we're in excess of that. And then that's one other item that I'd like to have some dialogue on. And then the do not enter, or the barrier in the exit location. Those are the 3 items really that I think I'd like to have. Well, obviously, we're here to answer any other questions that you have, but I do want to talk about those items. Lastly, we have talked to Ray Offner, MTS at the municipal authority, and we've provided the documentation he needs to transfer the sanitary sewer permit from its current owner to the new applicant. He has provided written documentation to us, verbal upfront, but we have written documentation that this would not require full sewage planning, this activity. So I just wanted to communicate that to the
They're
planning
not gonna
commission.
require any additional facilities for what's essentially a restaurant versus a bank?
According to Ray, no, that there is sufficient. It has a tap now. The conveyance and the treatment has capacity, and he's provided written documentation stating that it would not require full planning.
I guess I can see that with the lack of interior.
I mean, they don't have grease or anything. I'm not talking grease trap. I'm just
Yeah.
looking at, it's a different type
Yeah,
of,
different.
And we
certainly a higher water flow
Yeah.
than what you would.
So he did ask for historical data, which we received from First City Company, who maintained and leased the bank. So we provided a year's worth of water data, consumption data, and then Starbucks was able to provide a comparison store to provide those water bills. You have any questions for me at this point, or Ms. Federico on the phone?
One quick question regarding mobile orders. So are they going to be accommodated in parking, or are you thinking of accommodating mobile orders through the drive-through? That's a fairly high peak.
Sue.
Yeah, our capability for mobile orders for pickup at a drive-through isn't that great. So what most folks do when they do mobile order, will park, walk in, pick up their order and leave.
Right, that's what I'm looking at the
Yeah,
parking.
our-
It's weird, I've never done that.
Really?
No, I always go through.
Oh,
I mean, we are exploring, future, drive-throughs that one lane is for typical drive-through and then our outside lane will be mobile order only. So all in the early stages. So I gave you a heads up of what's to come in the future. Not here, but in.
Just again, the
Oh, not
parking
here,
is
not here.
Yeah, not here, not yet. That would
Okay.
require two lanes.
convenient for mobile
We
pickup.
have.
Well, we're all
we have
used to seeing,
sort of a secret in our hands.
In Wexford, that's I think the issue. In Wexford, you see a lot of people going in on the mobile orders.
Oh, yeah, they go in at.
But I have a
9,
question
10
on the
ones, too.
parking. There's 14 spaces. There looks like there's one disability space and 6 regular spaces. Then there's 3 employee spaces that I see and 4 dedicated limited parking spaces. Could you walk through that?
Those are for people that would walk in, place an order and leave. So just 15 minutes.
I mean, is it going to say this is where you park if you do that, or are they just going to park in?
Yeah, our signage states 10-minute parking.
I'm sorry.
She said the signage states 10-minute parking. The thought is that if you plan to stay longer and you plan to stay longer, say you know that you're going to walk in and then sit at the patio for 20 minutes, that communication on the sign would tell you to park elsewhere. The time limited are supposed to be used for people that walk in, place an order and leave.
Would they also be used by mobile customers? Those would be mobile.
Well, they could be, because if you
Right,
had to
you'd
walk
be
in,
less than
a
10
walk-in is a
minutes,
walk-in. It
whatever.
doesn't, you don't know if it's a mobile or just
Yeah.
someone walks in and orders at that point.
You know, I typically would be concerned about that because people ignore, family parking and everything, but
Well,
since
let's not make a
COVID,
survey of people
everyone's
up here,
gotten
please.
so set up with, these are
Yeah.
pickup spaces
Well,
that
yeah, people are gonna see a space, pulling a space for.
Yeah.
But my question, the other question I have is if you have 6 employees and only 3 spaces, I assume
Yeah, it takes some of those.
number of people, you could have 6 spaces of employees take 6 spaces taken up by employees. So in effect, you'd have 4 open spaces, 1 is disabled. So you'd have 3 spaces really,
And-
plus the temporary.
And we had I appreciate you asking the question. Starbucks has provided us with information. We presented it to the zoning hearing board, but these drive-through only stores, their parking requirement, what they're seeing needed is 10 to 12. So what Starbucks is seeing is that this is in essence two
Does that
more.
10 to 12, to
10
12
to
include
12.
employee
No, 10 to 12 parking spaces
total?
total, 10 to
And
12.
so that, okay.
So
Well, and
We
I think
believe-
I'll add, there was some discussion at the zoning hearing board of, acknowledging the fact that, we're not assuming or necessarily intending for people to take a jog across Blazer Drive to park. But the reality of the situation is if somebody wants to park that badly and they've run out of spots, they're either gonna leave or they're just gonna go across Blazer Drive because there's always spots.
Is there a
open
legal
over there.
agreement in place? They can use the parking in Blazer Drive?
That's not, I'm not opining
Okay.
on that. I'm
There's not.
saying, I'm using my eyes.
No,
looking at
I'm
the
just
parking
It's a big parking lot.
Yeah.
It's a huge parking lot.
Can't we just slap a crosswalk on it? I mean, there's literally 1,000 spots in that parking lot.
Cross
That are
Blazer.
unused.
Well, that's, yeah, that's not their
Wasn't Blazer
property, but-
Township Road?
I mean, for Starbucks customers to use that parking lot, there'd have to be an agreement.
right. I mean, we're not gonna officially sanction it. I'm just saying I've got eyes. So,
I'm not suggesting the numbers are inaccurate by any means. I'm just trying to make sure I understand when you say 14, what 14 actually is.
yeah,
Then let me ask you a second question. And this will address one of Dan's issues, and you may have addressed this in a later. These turnarounds for fire trucks, et cetera, and having to navigate possibly through the parking, the parking spaces. So if you got a full parking lot and God forbid there's a fire, what, it seems it's not just tight, it's like almost impossible.
so the fire truck was not the vehicle that was encroaching on the parking spaces. It was the refuse or the garbage collection
Okay.
and the delivery truck. We've shown a revised vehicle tracking that avoids the encroachment on the parking for the refuse truck because we don't know when that truck is going to come. In terms of the delivery truck, we will anticipate that delivery will be made off hours. And we have shown that the delivery truck will pull in and it will back into one space to be able to leave. So, but it won't be encroaching on, I can show you, well, it was encroaching on multiple spaces in the previous iteration on the plans that you're looking at. So we believe that we've addressed that with our revised submission.
And just one more question, this drawing shows 12 vehicles in the pull-through. Is that what the plan is, that it can accommodate 12 without overflowing onto Blazer?
Yes, it's 12 without overflowing onto Blazer, and the traffic analysis that we did during the zoning approvals and I just want to make sure I quote it correctly.
It was like 0.01%.
That's
Right, so the report, which if you've ever driven past the Starbucks on like the Thornhill, I mean, it's like Chick-fil-A sometimes, right? I mean, I was gonna say more than 12.
Well, this morning, just coincidentally, I was traveling north on McKnight, north of here. And the Starbucks, which is right next to the UPMC medical facility. And the traffic there comes off at 19, goes around the back of the building and then picks up on the north side of that Starbucks. So it makes a U.
how many cars was that?
It had to be, well, I was backed up on 19. I was stopped because people were trying to get in there.
That
And they
happens in
couldn't.
Wexford too.
So, and I'm traveling and I'm in the car and I did a quick count because I couldn't see how many were on the backside. But it was more than 12. And so I guess my question is, where does this study come from and what does it take into account? Because that was even a worse situation because it stopped traffic actually literally on 19.
I think that's probably a question for Sue, because she spoke to that. at the
That's
zoning
fine.
hearing.
Whoever wants to
Yeah.
answer that, because it was a real life today situation.
Yeah, I have some traffic questions too, but I think the engineer of the town is gonna address some of
No,
them.
if you have
Well-
traffic questions, you should
Yeah.
address them to the consultants
Okay.
first, and then we'll.
He's
we'll go from there.
available to speak to
Okay.
our analysis of what they've submitted.
So my question is, I'm sorry, were you done?
Yeah, let's
Well,
let Sue
what's-
respond to.
Yeah,
what
one
he
at a
asked.
time, I guess.
I have to ask, are you, and I don't know who is talking, a gentleman, but you were traveling northbound on 19?
Yes. And my name is Dan Corden, by the way.
Oh, hi, Dan. Up at our Wexford location?
It's up in the flats. It's the one right next to the UPMC Medical Quick Emergency Building.
I think that's a yes.
The
Okay.
Wexford one. Okay, so that's a really good question. So once upon a time, our drive-through stack or order point to window was 4 cars. So that means at car 4, if you looked on this plan, someone ordered 5 specialty drinks and now they're waiting in line, only 3 cars ahead of them to get those 5 specialty drinks. Our baristas inside are not equipped to handle those orders that quickly. So that store, I think we did that was it was a non-drive-through. We converted it to a drive-through and have our order point at car number 4. So we learned from those lessons and said, our baristas need more time to prepare drinks. So our engineers, well above my pay grade in Seattle, sit down with folks like Kimley Horn and Bill and his team and say, how do we engineer this so we can have a quicker turnaround and less cars on the tail, is what we call that, where car 12 is the tail. So they said, let's put our order point at car 7, and from order point car 7 to pickup window is roughly 4 minutes. That gives the baristas inside 4 minutes to make those orders. So it just runs more fluidly. We changed that in 2017. I think I said we did our Wexford store in 2015. So we learned from those mistakes, and that's how we come up with our 7-car order stack. Plus, we also we're sort of Chick-fil-A-ish in a sense that folks go outside with handheld orders and take orders while cars are in queue, weather permitting. So we've improved our equipment, we've improved on our operations, cameras, technology. I mean, our technology package is over $100,000 alone. So that's where the efficiency comes in.
Would it be possible, like, if you just have the pickup window on the north side of the building, that give you another 4 or 5 cars or so that would be able to handle that?
There's a significant,
Oh,
Wow.
yeah, so Bill, you could probably, either one of us can say it, but yeah, if you did just a street view, there's probably like a 15-foot drop on that other side. So where that car 1 is at the pickup window.
Yeah, I think I remember that
where
was
the
like a steep kind of to get out of there, right.
Yeah, that's where the existing like kind of bank teller window is. So it kept grade and we didn't have to do, an entire retaining wall on the other side too. And I think there's actually a vault there and the cost can just get out of control at that point.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right, the vault. I
There
remember we
is- there
talked
is a
about that
vault
at
on
the
that
board.
side,
The vault over there.
But it's too bad you can't go and just kind of go the reverse way, but you can't push your coffee that way,
But trust me, that was a question that, I mean, like, we all thought exactly
Yeah,
that.
you're all asking the right one,
So,
so.
Good thinking.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's just very easily to expect that more than 12 cars are gonna be in line for, and then that's gonna cause delays on Glacier Drive, and cars wanting to pull in there and where do they go? And then now you're just backed up, back up traffic quite a bit, so.
and in terms of answering your question, about where the traffic, the numbers come from. It's from the standard traffic engineering handbooks that are used across the country. And we did submit a traffic report, receive comments back, revise that traffic report per the town's traffic engineer. And some of the ways that he wanted us to look at this development, and we submitted that revised report. I think it was June was the first report, and September 2022 is the second report. So we did receive confirmation from the traffic engineer that the calculations were acceptable in terms of the anticipated number of cars that would be in that queue.
And is that taking consideration that right across the street, there's a grocery store? And Target, like the other shopping areas that a lot of people are going to be in that area.
It took into consideration the traffic data for all of the adjacent and even proposed developments. Now, that was something that the traffic engineer asked us to do, was accept and add other anticipated traffic flows.
Since we have him here, Mike, this is Mike Haberman, our traffic engineer extraordinaire. We don't get to see him often at meetings, but it's always a pleasure. Yeah, can you just let us know, was it McCandless Square that you wanted them to factor in?
So the first study that came in had some flaws to it as far as methodologies. And that was done as part of the zoning hearing process. So we did review the initial study and provide multiple pages of comments on some of the methodologies, and we requested some additional things and the different methodologies to look at for this specific type of use, in order so that we could see analyses that were more conservative than maybe we would traditionally ask for. One being that these types of facilities are, if you're familiar with the term pass-by trips, 80 to 90% of the traffic that's going to come to the site is traffic that's already on the road. And that if a Starbucks were there, they would leave the adjacent street, come in, and then continue on their way. So they're not new to the roadway network. Typically, you look at those being immediately adjacent to the site. So in this case, that would be Blazier Drive. Once you get onto a road beyond that through another intersection, it's more of a diverted link. So being where this is, those pass-by trips are really coming from 19, not Blazier. So they're actually, we have them treat them as diverted links. So they look like new trips to Blazier, but they're really being diverted from out on 19. So that was one thing we asked to be conservative. The second thing being the land use, the National IT Land Use Code for a coffee shop with drive-through only is based on the number of drive-through lanes. We asked them to look at this as if there were 2 drive-through lanes, even though there's only 1, because of the park and walk up component to it. Even though we expect most of the people are going to use the drive-through lane, we wanted the numbers to be inflated enough that we could get a conservative result, just to see if under those conservative scenarios, was there an impact that was tangible. So there's a couple of things we asked for with the first study that came in, and that they included in the revised study. By the time you cook all the numbers down, there's no traffic impact per se when you get out to Blazier and 19. From a number standpoint, the AM peak is the highest generator for a coffee shop with a drive-through, which would make sense. You do have some other peaks through the day, but the AM is the peak of this generator. For Blazier Drive itself and for the shopping center, it's actually the lowest peak, because you have, KFC and Clark and some other things that aren't AM generators. If you look at the volume of traffic that's coming out of this side of Blazier and coming into it in the morning compared to the PM rush or even a Saturday midday rush, it's a fraction. So they're a little bit on the opposite as far as the peak of a Starbucks versus what Blazier Drive's peak is. So that's a good thing. But we still wanted to look at it conservatively, which they did. And, from an impact standpoint, there's no traffic impact to the intersection of Blazier. Our other concern was, as you've discussed, is that queue, the drive-through and the queue drive-through, the drive-through queue. There's a lot of data that's been analyzed and presented over the years, and things are changing. I forget the woman's name here from Starbucks, but she compared it to the Chick-fil-A Lots of things have been changing over the years in getting these service rates, because these Q analyses are really based on the service rate of your drive-through window. And what they found is that in the older version stores, not just coffee shops, but fast food restaurants, your pickup window might have been 2 spaces in front of where you actually place your order. That's where the delay is. So what they've done in this design, and what you'll see Chick-fil-A do when they, even in their new designs, they're putting that order window way back. Because then your wait time is in between the pickup window and where you place the order. So what was happening before is you'd have someone place an order, they wait, someone else place an order, they wait. And a third order, they're at the order window. And everybody's just waiting for their orders, and all these other people aren't ordering it. So the people that the employees aren't able to start on the orders because they haven't gotten the order yet. So they pushed this thing back. I think there's storage for 7 vehicles now between. With that service rate and the single Q channel analysis, that's where we had a comfort level with it. These are relatively new. I've seen a couple other ones. I've watched them operate. They're a lot different than, it's hard to compare the one you're talking about up in Wexford, because they're totally different situations. So we had a comfort level with everything we asked them to do and with what the results are.
May I just ask one quick
Yeah.
question? Because the pass by traffic
Sure.
reference in the engineer's letter had me a little concerned, because from my perspective, pass by traffic would be if their driveways were on 19, because that is where most of
Correct.
their traffic is coming from. So you did have them analyze the
That
two
is how we had them
intersections?
look at it.
I just wanted to make sure, because that,
Yep. So by the time you kind of.
Yep.
You know, it's like a spider web. You have multiple ways
Yep.
in and out. You know, we know how bad the Pine Creek intersection and all that goofy areas up there. So. Yeah, the
the
south,
other end, the intersection
Yeah.
is,
so the southbound traffic, I think it
Yeah.
was like maybe 15% we're expecting
Okay.
might come in through that way. But by the time you take 90 down to 15%, you know, it's a small enough number that you won't notice it.
that's fine.
The
I just want-
majority is gonna want to use this, plus the southbound, I'll call it southbound, but on Plainview, it's eastbound. You have that right turn lane where you can turn right onto Blazer at the Pine Creek. Once one car is stopped at the red light, you can't turn right and stop. So once you're on 19 and that light's green, you're coming to this light to come in, if you're specifically destined to the Starbucks.
That's what I would do. Thank you. Just wanted clarification.
Is there room for like a pull-off spot or something? So if you do have the 5 specialty drinks, it's gonna take, 5-10 minutes or whatever, I don't know how long it takes, but you can kind of pull off and not hold up the whole line.
No, it would be my understanding, and you could correct me if I'm wrong after I say it too, but it's as the orders are placed, regardless of what the order is, it's the next person is the next person in line.
Right, like after they place that order, and it's gonna take a while to do that, just to kind of help the traffic flow, because some of the other drive-throughs, they have like a spot, like we'll pull over, we'll bring it out to you, and
I bet Sue can probably speak to this much better than I can, but anecdotally, because my husband for a couple of years managed a Starbucks. I've never seen a 5-drink order take 10 minutes.
Well, I don't know.
They are freaks with how fast. they
No, I get
process.
behind them every time. Everybody in front of me is ordering it.
But
Yeah,
I mean,
we all feel like we're behind that one
Yeah.
car, like the car at the McDonald's drive-through lane, and there's 7 kids in the back and they're all ordering Happy Meals. No, that, yeah, our customers are mostly grab and go. It's the mom who doesn't want to get out of the car because she can't bring her children inside, doesn't want to leave. So it's typically those on the go. 70% of our business, and that's a national number, is out the window. People don't want to kind of sit and stay anymore. Our mobile orders, when we developed the app, and we were very probably the last QSRs to do that, if you call us QSR, but our mobile orders went from like 6% to 25%. So the intent is people want things faster and easier, and not our original idea back in the 70s was to sit and stay. Our concepts have changed since. So we're always reinventing ourselves and kind of just churning and burning it.
What's your peak queue with the VIP location?
So I'll probably would have to get that for you, but, I don't know if you heard me earlier that our peak time, so our peak hours are 6 AM to 10 AM. 33% of our daily business is done during that time frame.
What's the VIP location?
That's the by the Thornhill.
That's the one I was referring to?
No, that's.
Oh, different one. Okay, never mind.
That's the other case.
Oh, I'm sorry, which one were you asking about?
Did you say the Thornhill location?
Yeah.
That sounds familiar.
Is that the one up 910?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
Yeah.
one up
That's
910.
yeah, like by T-Bones. and
Yeah,
Thornhill,
yeah, by T-Bones.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
right by 79 entrance?
yeah,
Oh, so I think, is that in the plaza, the end cap?
somebody is
Yeah.
saying yes. Sue
Yeah,
is not
it's-
local.
Yeah, it's by the
So,
Thornhill.
Yeah, I know.
okay.
We
yeah,
give
if you
our
tell her like
stores
buy
the-
the thing down the road, she does not see the
Okay.
road.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
give our
okay.
stores.
The
like
old
our-
King's
like
Restaurant, yeah, okay.
Yeah, on
Yeah, we
VIP
converted-
Drive, yeah.
We also converted that one, back in, maybe. I'll say maybe even 2014, 2015, 2016. So same issue with Wexford. We had that 4-car stack back there. That store is a very high volume store, very high volume. And,
That's what-
you know, we have good operators in there that can turn it around quickly, but we are also, that's that 4-car stack there that we have issues with. And, Bill here and with his colleagues, just so you know, just in general, across our region, my Northeast region, which spans from all the way to New England to all the way south to West Virginia, they're looking at every store with those short drive-throughs and seeing what we can do with the township to increase those car stacks, because they were just kind of placed inefficiently.
Sorry, Sue, in Pittsburgh, we explain where things are by describing whatever was there 25 years ago.
What used to be?
Oh.
We do that in Boston too.
Oh, all right, so it's universal. I feel better.
Okay, I'll just go on record, says I'm very skeptical about the 12-car queue. If it hadn't happened this morning, sure, it's a different location, but I was stopped on a major thoroughfare because of Starbucks, but I'll leave that at that. You had 2 or 3 other items that you brought up, and I thought we'd at least address them. One was lighting, and there's old lighting there, and now we have new lighting requirements. Is that what you were asking? Whether you,
My question is that we intended to use the existing lighting.
the existing lighting, which was
would-
under the old requirements. Do we have new requirements since those lightings were placed?
I think we're just asking that you show us that if you're gonna plan to use the existing lighting, is it adequate to give you coverage?
Is it?
I have a comment about that, because I think that I'm not in favor of lighting up the night sky with lighting in commercial locations, but in this location, a bank is a lot different than a Starbucks. You open at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning, it's dark. You close after dark. The bank did not. And what I can tell you is that a lot of the lighting along Glacier Drive is it's not even cohesive in terms of Target controls its lighting, that depending on their hours of operation, it might not even be on at 5:30 in the morning. The landlord, the property owner, is responsible for the middle section, and Giant Eagle is responsible for theirs. So Glacier Drive can at times itself be very dark. And well, first of all, I only see 3 light poles on this plan,
3.
if that was what was there.
Mhm.
And I'm just saying, I'm saying it more out of safety concerns. And especially because you have these elevation changes, you're going around a curve, you have elevation changes. I don't know how much spillover you get up from McKnight Road, but I personally think that you should rethink your lighting proposal.
So for our review purposes, at least, and I mean, that's different from discussion, and I understand making recommendations is, the planning commission. But at least, since you're asking from a review and requirement standpoint, the only things that our current code has for lighting is making sure that it's not going too far. So we don't have any minimum security lighting requirement. Again, the planning commission can certainly advise and make suggestions and whatever, but at least from the submission review standpoint, you know, that's not something that would trigger on a gateway.
Are you putting any light packs on the building or
Yes.
anything at entrances and sidewalks and things?
There-
So there would be additional light
Well-
to the poles?
But that would be part of a photometric.
It would
Right,
be.
right.
I mean, and that's correct. You can do a lot with wall packs.
Yeah,
and
there would
things.
be,
I'm saying this not because I'm trying to force you to do anything. I'm just telling you I live 5 minutes from here. I know what the property's like, and I think you want it to be attractive and safe for your customers.
okay.
So are you saying we should not waive that requirement?
That would be my recommendation so that Starbucks, for their own good, will maybe look at where we can understand better what's lit and what's unlit and how it's lit. And that is not excessive either.
And the other question was,
You would mention something about your plantings and you were going to use the existing plantings. And if you used the patio, you were going to add plantings around the patio, all of which exceeded our current requirements. This is the comment I thought I heard you say.
no, there's canopy and understory tree requirements associated with parking stalls. For every 24 parking stalls, you have a number of canopy trees, understory trees, and shrubs.
Because it's in
And
a development.
Yeah,
It's odd. A
yeah.
little bit odder.
And so if I did the calculations at 14 spaces, I would need 8 canopy trees, 6 understory trees, and 30, I think it's 32 shrubs. And but it doesn't indicate exactly where those need to be. It says that you have to have 320 square feet of landscape area. I believe I have 320 square feet of landscape area around the parking lot, and I have a whole site. I have existing trees that are remaining on the site. Then I've got a property with another 2.75 acres of wooded vegetation. I believe it meets the intent of the ordinance. I was planning on submitting it that way. But I don't want to be in a position where, I'd like to, I feel like we have enough progress on this plan where I could ask you to take action tonight and potentially recommend this plan. And I don't want that to be the deterrent for you not doing so.
So I'm just gonna speak to the landscaping plan only, because it sounds like we've got some other thoughts on the photometric plan where at least a few of us, want to see it, period. But with this landscaping question, personally, I'm inclined to be lenient for a couple reasons. One, if this wasn't inexplicably zone D development, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. I don't know why somebody did that. I would not have, it doesn't make sense. But because of that fact, they did go through the zoning hearing board and they did want this to come through the planning commission. So it didn't feel like there was this major change, in traffic, potentially traffic impact. I mean, we reviewed it and okay, the data checks out that we're not doing anything wacky and really increasing. But, the zoning hearing board was not comfortable with putting that through without you all at least getting to take a crack at it. But that said, there's some other aspects that they're adding that are enhancing the site ultimately that are not necessarily required, like the sidewalk, for instance. That was something that we expressed early on. We really want to see that connectivity with McCandless Square coming in. But since this isn't really a substantial redevelopment, it's just a change of use with some weird legalities around the zoning non-conforming issue. That's not normally something that they would have been required to do. So personally, I think just based on the things that have been expressed to me from conversations with council members, how much they want those sidewalks, and green space and plantings are important too, but they are adding quite a few. And I think those dollars being spent on the sidewalk versus maybe the landscaping ultimately is going to get us where we want to be with this site. That's just my opinion. So, you know, if anyone else feels otherwise, please share.
Any comments? My personal opinion is this, the building, I've always liked that building. I think it's an attractive building. I think the whole space is attractive. So I can go along with what RJ just said. I think if this were not an attractive building to begin with, an attractive space, then I would disagree, but that's just my thoughts on it.
I'd rather they keep the building and tear it down, and put up a new style store.
I agree. I think
It
it's,
does have a degree of attractiveness. Somehow is a little bad between the highway and the parking lot of Jenny.
you had a third item,
Those were the other
was
one
it?
was the exit lane. I
Which you
know
addressed.
gateways. I just want to make sure you're satisfied with that, the way we addressed it.
Seems reasonable to me.
Yeah. All right. Do we have any other issues or comments from the commission? How about,
I just want, Dan had something in his write-up on the sidewalk slope of the grading being 8.33% versus 5%. Has that been addressed in the updated?
We have addressed that with essentially their landings and slopes that meet ADA accessible guidelines. We called out landings.
Are your fire trucks, everything able to make movements without problems with the building also?
Yes, we are. The comment was in regards to the canopy was what was used in the comment letter.
Right.
I believe it was the bar that goes over the drive-through lane that was the intent of the question, because we
Right.
had the fire truck coming through the drive-through lane. And there is no canopy on the plans anymore. So
Okay.
So the bar's gone too.
what's that?
So the bar's gone too.
No, the bar's there. We just brought the fire truck in at a different location. We had the fire truck coming in on this entrance and coming through to come to the plan right side of the building. And now we have the fire truck coming in and over those delineators. So
That was my comment. It wasn't just a bar. There was it looked like there definitely was a little canopy over the ordering speaker.
Okay.
Presumably so that someone's ordering in the rain but it was labeled as a canopy.
Okay, and we've completely eliminated that movement for the fire truck to avoid any of those overhead obstructions.
okay,
Well, it's certainly nice to see something going in there, though.
yeah, I'm glad. I think so too. So do we have enough information? Oh, wait a minute, how about public comment? Is there?
If we're taking a motion, then yes, we would do the individual public comment.
But are there enough people concerned about the photometric issue that they want to see more information on that? Before we take any motion on this?
Since I'm the one who had the issue, I too am in favor of this development for many of the reasons y'all said. I have no desire to hold it up on a kind of trying to impose a requirement from this commission to do a photometric study. The best I can say is I support your development, but I think you will regret it if you don't look at your photometrics more carefully.
Can I answer that question for one moment? To Ms. Susko's point, if we were to do a photometric plan, I think Sue is probably thinking about the building lighting as well, to take that into consideration from a safety standpoint. But we're going to be looking at that from a spillage standpoint and property boundaries only. I mean, the photometric plan is going to place foot candles on the surface, but the only requirement in the ordinance that we need to meet is that we have no spillage on the outside.
No, I'm absolutely, which is why I'm
Okay.
saying, I'm not trying to impose anything upon you that our ordinances don't allow us to.
Okay.
I'm just simply telling you my opinion that I think that I know this site extremely well, and I just think that you would be well served by carefully looking at how you choose your lighting package. And in having said that, I'm personally in favor.
Okay, thank you.
Well, based on what I've heard, I think we can take a motion and we can move forward. So assuming that to be the case, then we ought to ask for public comment. Is there any? Apparently none in this room. How about online?
Everybody that is on the call is either us or Starbucks.
Okay,
Limited opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, you're night owls.
all right, so can we get a motion to recommend town council approve the land development application submitted by Starbucks?
I'll do it.
We have a motion from Al.
And that would be contingent on all remaining.
Yeah,
comments.
contingent.
Oh, sure.
Comments being asked.
And Shelley is the second.
Second.
All in favor?
I,
Aye. All opposed? It passes.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Gonna make some people in the office happy. This is not
Thank you, Mr.
terribly
Haverty.
far down the street from us.
Not me, I only go into bikes.
Oh.
I'll have to walk way over.
Yeah.
All right, item number 4.
Thank
The
you
continu-
all. Have a good holiday season. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Yes.
The continued review of the Ridge final subdivision land development application. You have the floor.
Good evening, Stephen Victor Wetzel Associates. Been here several times, so I think we're well acquainted with the plan. If you wanted to bring up the slide just to have a point to reference to.
Getting there.
There was a review letter issued by Gateway Engineers on December 1st. Today, we our responses to that, and I think we effectively answered all of their comments on that. So I'm sort of standing here thinking that Gateway has not had a chance to review that. I think we have addressed their comments, and they were very minor, dot the T and cross the I sort of things. So I think that we're hopefully ready to have you move forward on the plan.
So in your opinion, you've met all of his issues.
Yes. Yes, and I'm assuming what you will do is you will make a recommendation subject to those. So if we do not effectively meet those, that we must do that before we go on to the next step.
Dumb question for you, probably not associated with that. On the the east side of the development, the Perry Highway side,
Yes.
there's the steep embankment on southbound Perry Highway that goes up on the, we'll call it plateau at the top.
Yes.
In terms of the land development and earth movement that will happen associated with that embankment. How much is that, and has everything been checked, double checked, triple checked? Because this is Pittsburgh and goofier things happen in terms of you start moving at the top, you can install a drain a little bit, and then the whole thing comes down. I just want to make sure that multiple sets of eyes have been put on it, or hey, yeah, we're not even going that far back in terms of the land contouring that we're doing to impact that slope.
If we look at this drawing right here, you will see that the grading plan does push back at the rear of lots 19 to 14, I believe it is. And so it is taking that sloped area. The steepest sloped area is at the beside lots, beside lot number 11 at the cul-de-sac. That's where, if you drive the road, you will see a sheer cliff. I suspect it's a prior quarry in which they took rock out of there to create that cut. There'd be the only reason for having that. than a quarry. But at the rear of 19 down to 14, there is fill being placed in the backyard area to increase the pad depth, but that fill is at your township 3-to-1 code. The only place where we are asking for a modification is at the rear of lots 1 and 2, where we can use a 2.5-to-1 slope so that we can preserve the large trees next to our neighbor's property here. So to then answer your question, we are very comfortable with the 3-to-1 slope. With the stability, we have a geotechnical report to balance, to back that up. And in most communities, the fill slope can be 2-to-1, and we're quite comfortable with 2-to-1. So when we're at 3-to-1, we do not see an issue there.
You've got that drain. That runs parallel to Perry Highway. From the entrance all the way back to, I presume it goes to the stormwater detention pond, right?
I would not describe it as a drain. I would describe it as a storm pipe.
Storm pipe.
Yes.
It's something in the ground that requires excavation for its installation.
Absolutely.
And it looks to me as the untrained eye that it was very close to the top of the slope.
No, it is not running at the top of the slope. It's running really closer to the toe of the slope.
I'm talking about up from Perry Highway.
There,
And those contour lines are pretty tight on Perry Highway.
I just want to look to make sure I'm saying the right thing. The entrance design comes down to Perry Highway. We must pick up that water. PennDOT does not allow us to run water out. So we have a pair of inlets there. And we have to somehow transport that water to our detention facility. The elevation at the, I'll call it the plateau of lots 18 through 14 is sitting about 20 feet above the entrance to Perry Highway. So it's physically impossible to take the pipe that's picking up the Perry Highway water and running it to our detention facility. It's not up on the top of the slope. Now, what we do have on there, I can see it on this drawing here, where there's laterals that run from that main storm pipe that run up to the top and are picking up, the roof leaders in the backyards of those lots back there. But this is not a situation in which we are running a storm sewer nor a sanitary sewer at the top of the slope. That's a very vulnerable situation area where water leaking out in that area could saturate the soil and create a landslide, i.e. the one down in the infamous one in North Strabane, that's caused havoc and millions of dollars of construction. And the problem was they had a leaky pipe at the top of a hill. We all tried to avoid it.
Did you say Mr. Bain? Which one?
The one off the Route 65, wasn't it?
No, that's different.
That's Killbuck?
That's Dick's. No, that's Dicksmont.
Majestic Hills in North Strabane.
Okay.
Yeah, that was different. You want to know the history of that one?
I saw it in the papers.
I'll bore you.
I was just curious because I grew up in that area and I was like, what did I miss?
We'll chat on another one, but it was,
So I guess that is the thrust of the question I had that in place, which was if there's going to be a drain pipe that is somewhere in the vicinity of the top of the embankment up from Perry Highway.
it's not. It is not. There is no drain pipe running parallel.
I thought all the backyard drains on the east side of the new roadway were gonna collect in the back.
I
Running
see,
to the east.
I
which
see
is
the-
Toward Perry.
I see the laterals coming off unless
They go somewhere, right?
they drain down to the pipe. The pipe, I can't go to the pointer. You're looking at a drawing, so you'll see I don't know if RJ do you have a pointer?
Yes.
Do you mind?
Where do you want me to point?
Point to the intersection. With the entrance, right
There you
there,
go.
right there. And if you go directly to your
Left.
you will see a pipe running through the backyard area.
I'm gonna just zoom in a bit here.
I think just to clarify, he's talking about over the existing slope, not the fill slope.
Correct.
The existing slope is what
It's the existing. But. I mean, it's obvious to me. I can see the pipe. It's running. It's a gray line. There you go. Thank you. That's a storm sewer pipe.
Yeah, it looks like pretty much at the top of the existing embankment coming up from Perry Highway.
No, the top of the existing embankment is where they see the number 17. Lot 17.
Oh, lot 17,
That's the top of the hill.
so it's
that is-
halfway up the embankment?
No, I would say it's almost near the bottom of the embankment. What you have along there, and I can see it, let's take lot 17 as your example. Right at the road right of way, you have probably a 15-foot high, 1-to-1, 1.5 to 1 cut slope. From there, it then it then traverses, it looks like maybe a 5-to-1, 4-to-1 slope up to the number 17, which is the top of slope. That's where it is. So there is, if you would, here it's coming from Perry Highway. It comes up quickly about 15 feet. And then from there, it flattens in slope. It's still sloping upward to the number 17. That's what it does. And that storm sewer pipe is sitting pretty much right on top of that bench that comes at the top of Perry Highway. We think that's a pretty stable location there. And it's pretty much running the toe of the fill slope that we have at the rear of 18 to 14. Dan, did I describe that correctly?
Sounded good to me.
Okay. So I didn't distort that. So there's no storm pipe running parallel to Perry Highway at the top of the proposed fill slope. That's the critical point in my mind. Of where you would want to be very careful. It's not to say you shouldn't do it, but you'd want to be very careful. We don't have that situation. Our storm sewer pipe is down at the bottom of the fill slope.
Did that answer your question, Brendan?
They answered it, yeah, I mean, I'm not an engineer.
So the way that I look at this, just to give you a different perspective, is that when you put in a bench to put a fill slope in, typically they put a rock key and a drain at the toe of that slope to hold that embankment in. This embankment they're only building is only about 10 feet high. It's not really that big. So this drain that Steve just described, that'll act as a drain for the fill slope along that toe slope area anyway and carry the water away. So it's going to probably be down in rock because that bench there is a rock bench on the top.
Yeah.
And then they'll have to import some of the fill to create the fill slope. So it'll all be stable. It'll have to be inspected and verified when they go out to do the work. I mean, that's the idea when you build a fill slope. We'll have them certified to those that are part of the notes on the plan. They have to certify all this and provide the town with inspection reports and so forth. So if there's any adjustments need to be made, the geotechnical engineer of record will be there to watch this go in. And again, it's not like it's a 50-foot slope. It's only a 10-footer. So I'm comfortable with it. I don't see any, I don't see that as being a major issue.
Okay. Do you want to take public comment before we go through each of these motions or as we go through each of them?
First, before we do that, has the engineer, Dan, have you had a chance to review the new submittal?
No, we've not.
No, that came in, what was it, yesterday?
Morning.
Yeah, so
Morning.
no disrespect intended, but I'd rather have.
Okay.
I know you believe you addressed everything.
Well, then let's go through
Consensus.
the items and we'll explain how simple it is that how we responded. If that was the next step, if that would make you more comfortable.
Actually, I feel no disrespect again intended. I feel more comfortable if the town's representative had chance to review it and accepted that the responses were adequate.
So here's where we're at. This is our last planning commission meeting before we ran out of our MPC deadline. So one of two things has to happen tonight. Either we take a vote or the applicant grants an extension and we go through next month, and however long, the extension is granted until. Steve, what is your opinion on that?
So you're saying, directly to you, you're saying that even if we would talk through these things and you can see how simple and how we've answered each one of those, you still would not feel comfortable without a absolute assurance from Dan.
My personal opinion, and I'm only one voting member, I would not, because there were so many open items in the review letter.
A lot of the language that Gateway uses leads you to believe that there are open items when they're really not open items. Trying to find out which one, where his comment was. And maybe
Well, you're probably gonna mention this, so let's just knock it out. Most of the stuff that is under general comments are all things that are conditions of approval and all.
Right,
this
I'm looking at
plan.
stormwater.
Yeah, so we can cut those out, but we still got a couple pages that you're probably looking at.
okay, so those
I
that
don't want to
under general
presuppose that
comment,
I know more than Gateway does, so I think I'm in the camp that let's do this formally. Let Dan go through the comments, make sure he's comfortable. We're we kind of gonna have to defer to him anyway, because although it's all sounds good, for us to have an intelligent opinion, it's not gonna be as intelligent as his. So how about, and I don't want to delay yours again, I understand that, but I think from a process perspective, this commission ought to do it that way.
And for my benefit, your responses came in when?
this morning,
Okay,
we received his December 1.
okay.
We were given, weekends, et cetera,
Sure,
et cetera. I
understood.
think we did a pretty quick turnaround.
I agree, but
Yeah.
nevertheless, they came in this morning, so I think I would agree with that. I think we need more than a day to look at things to make sure we're in good standing with everything that's been presented. And if they are as straightforward as you say, it should be a slam dunk next meeting. Now, we've said that before, and we haven't had a slam dunk yet.
We haven't, but let's just cut to the chase. I'll grant you an extension.
We're at the ring.
All right,
Let's just do that.
right.
What is necessary? I don't know what the calendar is.
Do some math.
Do the math. And
Yeah.
I mean, if the majority of the board feels the way you do, fine, let's just do an extension and we'll just come back next month. And
But-
I would just ask, the list is pretty small. And I hope that Gateway will give us a turnaround quickly to this. Last time, again, I waited till December 1 to get our turnaround. No
And
offense to Dan, but
I agree, and I think
Our just for the record, our requirement is that Gateway gets me their latest review letters the week prior to the meeting, ideally the Wednesday by, but we had a lot of plans and the revisions come in when they do.
the problem with that system is that every time that happens and he writes 1 or 2 comments, we can never satisfy.
Well, here's the good
But-
news. Bruce regularly walked in seeing the letters about an hour prior to the meeting, so I have improved that quite a bit, I'd say probably. Moving on, though, let me double check. I think 30 days is probably going to get us where we need to be to at least make it to the next council meeting. I wish I could find the email in which you granted the extension.
Well, if
Here
you want
we
to make it to a
go.
date certain,
Let's see here. Sorry, what is the?
make it to
I
a
said,
date certain.
make
not
it
just
to a
30
date
days.
certain.
yeah.
Just give me the date you want it to be extended to.
Aha, okay,
don't
so
have-
you gave us through January 4th prior. We will make it through that planning commission meeting, but we need to get to at least one town council meeting.
Mhm.
So let's do at this time, January 31st, understanding that if council wants more than one meeting to get through,
Another extension.
we may be doing this again. So,
Us, I would hereby grant you an extension until January 31st, 2023. Unbelievable. It's here already, 2023. And I'll follow that up in writing tomorrow.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
I, like you, would like to see this move forward. And so hopefully next time it will.
There, I noticed our neighbors are here, and if they have any comments that we haven't addressed, but we'd like to know about it before we, if we good? Okay, okay, thank you, thank you.
Any other comments that should be addressed? I agree. Put them out now. Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
He's going to.
I'm
He's
not
standing
moving.
right there.
Oh, we're under the next.
Too.
All right, item number 5. The proposed rezoning of 10-410 and 10-418 Perry Highway to C3. Applicant proposes a car dealership for the future use. Go for it.
PowerPoint, please. Go right to the next slide. My name is Stephen Victor from Victor Wetzel Associates. Here tonight with John Hazelton. He is the general manager of Schultz Ford in McCandless here. And he'll talk a little bit about what we're proposing to do when we get a couple of slides in. So what I have here is a strip map of Perry Highway showing what I refer to as the, can you shrink it so we can see the title block? Yeah, a little bit. We could.
There we go.
Thank you much. So we can see the Wexford Flats, as we refer to it. The Schultz Ford dealership, the photo of it is on the left, and the arrow takes you to where it is located. It's just immediately north of the North Allegheny High School. So
Right.
that location there, and it is directly across the street at the, I think it's former, I think they're closed, Toma Funeral Home. And it is the 2 lots that Toma Funeral Home is located. And that's what we are requesting to rezone. As you may or may not already know, when we get to the end of it, we're now expanding our rezoning. They've now put 3 other very small parcels in an agreement as well. And so we've just applied for expanding our rezoning. So whatever we go through tonight, I'm anticipating we're going to come back next month so that we can pick up and discuss the entire one. But I'm going to touch on those points when we get to it.
And
So
let's, just so I don't forget on a procedural note, because I have to resend this to the county, it's a materially changed application. We will start the clock in January, but we will retain what I expect to be the public hearing at January 23rd. Figured we might as well still bring him in to talk about it tonight, because I mean, the information is still the same, but that is when the review clock will start, since we received yesterday the addition of the 3 parcels.
Yeah.
Okay.
The
Thank you.
information has changed, though. They added 3 lots.
That's what I'm saying.
That's
It's a
correct.
Material change.
and
so
we fully acknowledge that. My letter said that we recognize it and you'll be tabling this.
we understood that we were gonna be talking
No
about it,
argument.
but I just wanted to put it on the record, so,
All right.
okay, go ahead.
That is our location map. Next slide.
No, I can,
Scroll.
yeah, I put it in full screen mode and now my computer's
There we go.
frozen.
Thank you.
Here we go.
All right. If you were to go up and down the Wexford Flats, you will find 12 other dealerships and used car dealerships. Acura, Honda, Chevrolet, Saab, Pontiac, GMC, et cetera, all the way up and down. Mercedes, if I leave out Mercedes, all the way up and down through that area. So there's a significant number of car dealerships in this area. And the one at the very bottom is Schultz's second facility, that their Schultz Lincoln facility. And the one we're talking about is Schultz Ford, and across the street from that at Tacoma. Next slide. The reason that we are here and requesting it is that Ford Motor Company is coming out with EV lines. You may already own one, or they're coming, and they would like to have us have a new separate dealerships for those. And for that, I'm going to ask John to step up. Next slide, and he can maybe explain and give you just a little background as to what Ford is looking for from their dealers.
Yeah, I have actually a question. I was curious about this. Is this gonna be a Lincoln EV? Because that's the store that's required to open the new facility, right?
So
No, so basically Ford's biggest initiative in the last 100 years is of course the full electric models. They already have the Mach-E, the F-150 Lightning and the full electric Transit with more models coming in the future. So what they're doing is Lincoln and Ford both is Lincoln didn't have a choice. You had to participate in the Model E depending on how many cars you sold per year.
Right.
Ford, you could choose whether you wanted to or not, but it's kind of like a pay to play type of thing.
Different certification levels for the Ford dealerships, right?
Yeah, there was a minimal one where you have certain requirements. It's still the same electrical lines you have to run, but you have to buy less chargers, but you can only sell like 25 a year. Where to get like full allocation, you have to basically invest, 1.2 billion and all the stuff with chargers and everything else to do it. Lincoln's a little bit differently because they basically took where you're at annual sales and said, if you're above this line, you're top tier. If you're below this line, you're second tier and you have no choice. So basically where we're at is, of course, we have a capacity problem at our Ford store across the street. You have to have customer facing chargers that people can actually come and pay, whether they drive a Ford, a full electric car, or a Tesla, a Nissan, whatever it is. You have to have the chargers available where people can actually get power from. You have to have the space for that. You have to have a parking lot. You have to have special service equipment, all the stuff. It's really not feasible to do at our current location. So what we're looking to do is basically right across the street, have the same, create like a boutique EV showroom that's for people that are interested in fully electric cars and have information there, have service page, you can work on them there, and also have the chargers available for customers that need to charge their cars if we're servicing the cars, but also public charging available too for other people in the area that need to charge their vehicles. So that gives you.
What level of chargers are you providing?
There's different requirements, and I don't want to speak fully of what the amperage is because I don't know them offhand, but
Assume it would be what we classify as level 3. because
Those are the DC ones?
the DC ones. correct.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
have to-
Yeah, because you're not gonna plug in for 8 hours.
No.
for dealership.
So there's two different types of chargers you use. The one basically will charge a full car in about 8 hours.
Yeah.
The DC ones where you charge 80% in 20 minutes, that's what you have to put in. Like our requirements is we have to have 3 of the DC chargers accessible at all point in time with a lit up area 24 hours a day. Of course, the smaller ones closer to the building and also inside our service department too. But this is going to keep getting bigger and bigger with the more electric cars are on the road. And this is an initiative of the government, of the state,
Yeah.
of townships, of everything. So we're really going for the whole green environment where it's a small boutique showroom, plenty of nice landscaping around it, have the chargers available there. But most of your money's coming from the infrastructure of actually putting the lines in. So our goal is to basically plan for the future where you have enough lines for the bigger chargers are going to come out in 2026 and 27. More chargers available as everything kind of progresses that way, but starting off with minimalized chargers and be able to build from there.
You can have a reservation system or anything for the chargers?
For the public to use.
Yeah.
No, it's really just like a gas station, like you see at Sheets and everything else now, where people can come in and you can.
It'll take a little longer though.
Yeah, it can, like, that's what we actually talked about in our Harmerville location, where the only chargers around Harmerville is the Sheets down there. And it's full all day long, like
Yeah.
there's people there nonstop.
And maybe you hang out long enough that you find a car you want.
That's exactly
We-
it, too.
I'm sorry, I kind of just had that question offhand. We should probably let him actually do
Sorry.
his thing.
Yeah,
and
that's kind of my you really.
Because I've got a couple more questions in general,
Sure.
but
No,
I
that-
don't want to derail you.
No, that basically, your question is just what's answering what we're doing there. It's more of a, a need basis for what's going on with electrification of vehicles, for also consumer questions they have where basically you can charge a car and learn more about them because they are coming. You can see what Tesla's doing and everybody else is selling EV models in California is doing. We're just really trying to get ahead of it with, instead of trying to just plug it into a Ford facility that's really not designed to handle that kind of capability, to really make something that's good for the area, good for the brand, and good for the consumers as well, is what we're really trying to get at.
That kind of, I guess, sort of answers the question that might as well ask it now since you said that. We dovetailed into what you were going to say anyway. So given sort of the changes that the industry has seen over the last couple of years, I mean, my assumption is that going forward, dealers are just not going to carry the same amount of new inventory that they have
Correct.
historically.
And especially electrical cars, it's more of an order-based system.
Right, because
Yeah.
people are willing to wait a couple months, so why on earth would you tie up your,
Yeah.
cash flow in that? So given that, there are gonna be a lot of dealerships that have a whole lot of pavement that's sitting there doing nothing, so what? I mean, we'll talk more about the application before us, but in general, I'm just kind of curious why the decision was to acquire more property rather than maybe look at sort of the empty inventory space and pivot there.
I don't know if you ever drove through my parking lot in Wexford before, but there is not a single empty space, even with lack of
Oh,
inventory.
so you've got, okay.
I think that's what I can interject, because the car dealerships that we've been involved with. the majority of the space is eaten up
Service.
by service and used cars.
Correct.
Yeah.
So typically it's just notice.
Lots.
Yeah, so you do, but luckily.
But I haven't looked at yours closely recently.
Yeah, so in the, before COVID happened, we got all the inventory, we actually worked off of 2 storage lots plus our lot because our lot was never big.
Right,
But we have over 100 customer pay ROs per day of customers bringing their vehicles in for service. So most of our lot is employees and service. There's actually not that many new cars on my parking lot.
so really what's changed is you no longer need the overflow storage lots, but you're pretty much at capacity.
Oh, yeah, like today I came back in the middle of the afternoon, I literally took me 15 minutes to find a parking space.
That's a valid answer,
And,
I'll take it.
And we're,
Don't you have a sign that says
You
you
would
would?
but that's the biggest concern about the public facing chargers is you have to have them available because Ford's biggest goal is to, if they can put a charging station every Ford dealership, they basically have the biggest EV charging network across the nation,
Mhm.
beating out Tesla. So that's kind of Ford's goal of why they're doing that. That's Ford's reason why doing that. And not all dealerships are going to sign up for it, but you look at our area, it's a very, very high take rate of electric vehicles. Maybe because the Tesla's been there longer, but we sell more than most people do already without even really having its own electrical facility. And like you said, most of them are orders for people ordering them. They're waiting, maybe a couple months, maybe even a year for their vehicle. F-150 Lightning, they're waiting 2 years for them. We still have 125 people waiting to get their orders built. So
Okay.
there's a lot of traction behind it, and they're going to come out with more EV models in the next 3 years.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
John gave me an interesting number. 90% of the American population lives within. how
Yeah, within
close?
20 miles of a Ford dealership.
Yeah,
You know,
I
and
believe
I think it's
that.
like 80% within 10 miles. So yeah, that's the whole goal. Ford's goal is to basically be able to sustain the charging network to get rid of the charging anxiety a lot of customers have with EV vehicles. So
I mean, that's shown in data to be the biggest barrier to uptake.
Oh, yeah,
Exactly.
charging anxiety is huge.
exactly, yeah.
Well, he's also went on to explain that the GPS systems in the cars now
Will tell you
will
where to
tell you
charge.
where the charging stations are.
Yeah, we talked about it. We use the Mach-E and the F-150 Lightning because the Transit's a little bit less of a charging, but most cars are getting between 250 to 300 miles per charge, which really most people fill up their gas tank once a week, right? So you plug in your car at your house overnight once a week and you're fully charged. But if you're going on a long trip, the navigation system through the Florida Pass will actually tell you from here to Florida how far you can make it to what charging stations and where you should charge at to make your destinations.
Oh, this is interesting. So basically people can take long
Yep.
car trips and.
Well, if
maybe
there's charging
by Fort hopping.
infrastructure on the
Yeah.
road.
If there is.
So there-
Plan long
Yeah.
The
term.
challenge is the South doesn't have the charging systems in place yet.
Yeah, in a lot of
So-
the country areas.
But if they're forcing it at corporate. I
Yeah.
guess they're trying to-
And that's the
yeah.
point. That's where Ford's going at. And
Fascinating.
it's a great initiative they're doing, and there's good reason why doing it, because there's so many pluses of having electric cars. Even the cost of ownership's way down when you have an electric vehicle. There's no engine, there's no spark plugs, there's no oil. These cost of ownerships is a lot less.
You're gonna be the service department out of business.
It does, it does.
About the battery, what you do with the batteries when you're all done.
Yeah, well, that's, I don't even Ford's building that giant electrification center in the south around Kentucky area where it's going to be cradle to grave of actually producing the batteries and recycling the batteries afterwards. So Ford's spending $5 billion building a whole factory down there.
Can we zero into this space?
Absolutely, sorry about that.
Thank you. Thank you. The pictures that you're seeing here came from Ford. And you can see the extent to which they are investing just in, what's it going to look like and what the dealer's expectations have to be. And so we've used this to prepare our studies to talk about the usability of the property, because with any rezoning in McCandless, we're required to submit a rezoning plan so you can see what we're talking about. So next slide, please. So the property that we're talking about that we've previously filed an application for is 1.79 acres. You can see the left side, which is the westerly side, that along Perry Highway, is in the C3 zoning district. And the blue area is the existing R2 zoning. So the Toma Funeral Home right now has more under R2 than it is C3, and it is that blue area that we're asking to be made into C3. Also point out that our neighbor to the north is Beryl, and that they currently go back as deep as what we are asking to do with their area. Next slide. Again, we just wanted to show you on an aerial photograph so you can see who our neighbors are. With Beryl to the north, we have a single family residential neighborhood to the east of us. They already back against Beryl, but you'll see on Beryl's side, there's extensive landscaping and buffering. We have existing buffer, trees and buffers. You'll see on our concept plans, we stayed the 40 feet away so that we're not disturbing that embankment and the existing trees that'll be there in that area. The pink dashed line runs through to north-south there, parallel to Perry Highway again. To the left of that is our C3 area. To the right of it, where the word site is the R2 that we're asking to be made to C3. Next.
Before you go with that,
Oh.
the elevate, those homes that are behind you off to the east,
Lower, about 20 feet.
is that the same depth as it is up at Beryl?
No, it's not. I went by today. Beryl's slope is much more significant
It's
than.
taller.
Okay, so
It
it's
is
flatter down where you are.
Yes.
It is flatter.
I mean,
but
there's
it is
still a slope, but
there's
it's
still a slope there.
not as, okay. I was,
And it's also much more open
Yeah,
than the Beryl site.
Yeah, we
Okay.
have to buffer that.
we can,
Oh, yeah, they've got a fence up and
yeah.
from what I can
there's-
see.
Yes, I'm sure they. So next slide. Maybe I should back up if I could, just one, just to show who our neighbors are to the
One
south,
item
because I think they're
or-
relatively important to us. In the lower left, there's two commercial business. One of them is Shorkey's, Jim Shorkey's, Jim Shorkey Detailing Shop. So, and then at the very corner of what's Einhaus and Perry Highway is the gentleman who we're going to be buying the property to the west. And you'll see in a few slides. And then as we go down where the word R2 is, above that, there's a vacant lot owned by the same gentleman who owns the single family house at the end of Einhaus there. So that's who our neighbors are. Next slide.
So
Can I ask you a
can I-
question? There-
Yes.
In the, I know you're only looking at this piece here, but in the piece that becomes the bottom of the T in the new lots that you're gonna
I
buy.
have slides that'll show that in a second.
There's two homes on there before you get to this vacant lot.
We're buying those. two
You're buying
homes.
both of those homes.
Yes.
Okay.
So they'll-
Interesting, if you see of the two homes, the right one has a blue roof.
Yeah.
That's not a blue roof,
It's
that's
a
a
tarp.
tarp. It's been there for
Yeah,
years.
I know. I saw it today. It was,
So
So,
there'll be one residence left on what is
Einhaus.
Einhaus.
Einhaus, I think I'm pronouncing.
Einhaus.
and the,
Einhaus, yeah.
and the buffer, that 40-foot buffer, when I walk back there, where's that buffer? That is 40 feet from where? The edge of the woods or that, or where the slope starts down to those yards where the houses are behind it?
Or we're required under, if it was already rezoned. The transitional buffer area between the R2 and the C3 is only 15 feet. So because
Yeah,
we have,
15 feet on the side, but on the, all the way at the back of the property.
it still only has to be 15 feet. We have made it 40 feet because that's the distance that covers those existing trees. Now rightfully so, they're not as full and as deep, and we have plenty of opportunity to fill in more plant material in that area. But we kept it more because I think the people in those single family on the east have a different expectation than the gentleman who lives at the rear of Einhaus. You know, one's on a public street with a whole bunch of single family neighborhoods and one guy's stuck at the end of a private street that's a commercial street. I think it's different expectations, and I suspect someday he will go commercial too. But what we did,
Wait a minute. Do you have any color? Or through your interactions, do you have any color with the township about how the C3 zoning line as it presently stands came to be
Hmm.
that way,
Right.
which looks like it bisects individual lot and block, parcels.
Yeah,
It does.
It's split zoning. My best guess is that whenever they did this, they just drew a line,
So
Yeah.
maybe
you know,
that-
through, I think it's 200 feet, I
Okay.
want to say. and
yes,
That was a
They just-
typical old zoning way of doing
Yeah,
it.
Yeah,
but and back to we did the last comprehensive update in 1970s, so yeah, it's like that all along the flats for the
Yeah.
properties that weren't fully commercial.
the reason it is not 200 feet on Mr. Barrel's property, the late Mr. Barrel's. Is that he came in and asked for a rezoning, I think twice, and kept moving the line further back and back.
Yeah,
And
most of the
township's-
properties that are fully encompassed in C3, I think at some point over the years have come in. for
Oh, yes.
Something like this.
Yeah.
It's not something we do today.
So
And is the township's position that if the front half of your lot with frontage on the roadway is zone C3 and the back of your lot is R2, that you do what?
Well, back up one slide and I'll answer that question for you. If we, you can see what happens on Toma.
Percentage of it.
Toma went 100 feet plus, at least 100 feet beyond the C3 line.
Because it's a
to do his parking.
Yeah, the parking lots don't have to follow the building setbacks the same way.
Right, but they're not allowed to be in the R2 zone. That's illegal, but it was been allowed.
Wasn't here.
So
Don't
that's,
know how.
those things happen with zoning.
What exactly is the zoning on this parcel?
You mean like what's happening right now?
As we stand here today, what? I mean,
Where,
I know why we're doing this, but
Yes.
legally, what is the zoning
of
of the parcel
the-
subject to the rezoning?
the
C3, which allows you to do almost anything and everything in a commercial district.
Yeah.
For the front.
Yeah, for the portion that is,
Well, my
Zoning
question,
such.
was, what was the zoning of the parcel? Because the
Split.
parcel could only have one zone.
no,
No, it's split.
as it
Split.
turns
Well, I
out.
know it's split on, I just can't.
No,
I can't
really, well,
figure
so
out how.
there's no compendium, like the county doesn't list our zoning districts in their real estate portal. Like the only place that our zoning map exists is in our zoning map.
Right,
So,
if you were to like, say, I want a long driveway. You could be R2.
Yeah, the only thing you
Yeah.
can, in theory, the only thing you can put on that property, the R2 portion, is a single family lot,
Mhm.
but it would be landlocked. You know, basically by the commercial that's in front of it. Almost have a landlocked situation.
You couldn't do that, because then you'd have two principal uses on that.
No, you'd break it into two lots. You'd have subdivided,
And then you would have frontage.
and you can't do it because you don't have frontage. So in theory, it's landlocked.
Yeah.
Well, it's part of the reason why people can ask for rezonings is that you see these irregularities and peculiarities and you request what we're doing here. We're requesting to rezone it. Just a different perspective.
Yeah.
As you say, back in 1970, this made sense because there wasn't much, I don't know if you were here in 1970, but Perry Highway was probably not much traffic and not much commercial real estate. back in
nothing was deeper
1970.
than 200 feet, probably.
And I
Yeah.
think the reason perhaps that they may have done that was based off of. I think even back then, the way that we did our setbacks were from what district you abut. Rather than what use you are, which is the more common way to do setbacks. We probably said, well, that'll give somebody a buildable area in the front. If we zone everything that's, I think it's 200 feet back, then you've got 100-foot buffer or whatever it is. Or from R2, and then you get the front.
That
lot
100-foot
size.
buffer didn't exist back in the 70s when that was acquired. That was a, I don't think
Interesting.
so.
Well, and we don't know when
But-
Ashley Hill Drive was built, so theoretically you might have
Yes,
been
we
able to
do.
come in from the back with the road.
It was probably all R2 back then, though. I mean, we've. yeah.
That's what I'm saying, you could have developed.
It's
that.
it's a lot of speculation.
Yeah,
The-
we're speculating about things we don't know.
Bottom line is,
Yeah.
today, we would never split zone.
Part of my concern just goes to the settled expectation of the neighboring properties.
Sure, yeah.
What do they expect on that Ashley Hill Drive, which I think is a relatively newer development? What was their reasonable expectation? Was it that they abutted a property which was, for all intents and purposes, commercial in its entirety? Or would they have reasonably believed that they abutted a property that was an R2, which is the back part of this? What was the expectation? Would you say, well, yeah, I abut an R2, but it's also C3, or would you say, well, look, it abuts Perry Highway, which was Perry Highway, I think at the time that subdivision of the easterly side came about. And therefore, one would reasonably say, you know what? I can see that that is a commercial lot for all intents and purposes. And the natural expansion of that would be to take it back to the western edge of that newer subdivision on the east. That's ultimately where my consideration for rezoning goes. I just didn't know if there's any color as to how the particular zoning lines as they appear actually came about on a map, other than someone put a ruler there and traced it and said that's good.
So that's how it came about 50 years
Depending,
ago.
and depending on whether, you know, the sample house that I pulled is representative, which I think it is for that street, it says built in 2012. So they're pretty new.
I think, and who came first? I think Beryl came in. So these people built these pretty nice houses backing onto Beryl. So I think their expectations were they're backing onto it. And we recognize that they're there and recognize that there needs to be adequate buffering. You know, we didn't try to show what the plant material would be, but we did go and say, we're going to do it more than twice what the code requirement is. So again, the code's 15, but we said, let's just arbitrarily do 40, but if it needs to be 50 and, you know, do whatever it takes, when we go through the land development process, that's certainly possible.
What about lighting?
The area that, and that's probably a good thing to look at this site plan.
Next slide? Or
No, this one right here, you
Okay.
got it. When we come forth with a rezoning, we're required to submit a conceptual plan. And then we have to live by that plan.
Mhm.
And so what we are showing is that there is a blue dashed line at the rear of our buildings. Can you point that out?
Oh, yeah, it's kind of.
Okay, right there. And that represents a 100-foot setback from our residential properties that are to the south of us. And basically, everything between that blue line and the blue line in front out on Perry Highway, which is your 60-foot front yard setback, is the only zone that we can build in under this application right here. Now you're going to see, we're going to modify that because we're going to buy 3 more lots. But basically, what can you do with that rear? It's basically just going to be parking lots for service vehicles or used cars or new cars.
Right, my
And
question
therefore,
was,
there's no reason to have it.
you won't have any lights.
You'll have lighting there, but it could be done in such a way that it would not be intrusive to those neighbors. Otherwise,
When that photometric.
Photometrics come
You
in
would-
there. I'm just looking at the fact that they
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
have the slope separation
Yes.
that Beryl has, so.
there is,
Well, yeah, I should probably, we'll wait until. we
Yeah.
see what-
there is almost no business that I know of that doesn't do more intensive lighting than car dealerships.
For
But they
security.
do for, now it's for salesmanship, for sales. Where we're having sales, they have security lighting, but that's not different. They want to light it up so that people come through. I don't see this back end as being an area where we would be doing that. We have employees, we have everything else. So we're not going to light it up like, if you were going down Perry Highway and seeing all the lit lights up in the front yard, that's a different level of lighting than we would have in this rear yard area.
And I mean, realistically, you know, I'm not advocating just context of operations. What's gonna happen is the salesman is going to, pull, you know, basically get the
Bring the
idea,
car up.
yeah, of what
Yeah.
somebody wants and then pull up the online
Yeah.
inventory.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to have 24-hour day, high level lighting in that back area. We fully recognize that. And we know in the site plan process, we'll be coming through with photometrics and can show you that. So next slide. Here's what we're asking. When we recognized the prior drawing, what was going on was we were really getting squeezed for our service areas and our business areas. So we had a very detailed discussion about, are there other properties that are available? And I talked about the blue roof that's, you know, been under tarp for many years and the other properties. And so we went and talked to the owner of those 3 properties. The 3 properties, one is a 10-foot wide sliver. Then there's 2 houses. And so we've have those under an agreement. And so what that does is that then pushes our 100-foot setback line further back. And again, if RJ, if you can point out where that is. Thank you. So it goes out to there now. So it just allows us to be able to better, I think, put the maintenance facility in the back as opposed to where we had it before, parallel out front. So it does that. And I think the site configuration works much better for that. So we're put that under agreement. And so that's what was submitted to you today. Next slide is to expand the rezoning to now, I think someone used the term T. So we now have this T configuration. It's the leg dropping down toward Einhaus. That would be what we have requested. And the next slide just shows you how we now have increased, I think it was 1.79 to 2.46 acres of current R2 to now become C3.
So your site plan doesn't appear to be showing any access onto Einhaus.
Correct. And we expect that we don't, well, we just didn't go there. We didn't feel that that was appropriate. Also, there's probably, we haven't had discussion, but
Intersection to come out of.
yeah, we don't want that traffic and we want to control for security purposes.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if you've driven, I
Taxpayers.
find this very funny. There's one of the dealerships up near the Lexus dealer. And I was driving by there today, and as I went by, they're parking their own vehicles to stop people from driving through the parking lot to view cars. And I'm thinking, well, that's exactly what we're doing here. We don't want the random car coming in. We want to be able to control that, with a couple little shutoffs there, and we can really tightly control where people can come in and out for security purposes. So we have intentionally not connected to Einhaus.
Well, part of Einhaus is caved in on the bottom before you get to this house here.
So is this?
Yeah, I didn't dare go down there.
I mean, you can't, if you had a half decent car, you're not driving down Einhaus.
Well,
I mean,
there's also a problem in that it's a private street, and if we use it, we got to pay for it. Participate in the pay for it. We have no need. So that takes us to, what our application now has been amended. It's a larger acquisition because we think this is what we will need to be able to satisfy the size building we would like to have and the parking areas that we would have. So it becomes very comfortable for our situation where before we were tight and cramped. So this is our application, and look forward to coming back next month to have a discussion on the amended application. But if there's any comments that you would like to share with us,
I have a question
sir.
for the Schultz Ford, which is across the street, your traditional Ford dealership. Where do you load and unload cars off of the car carriers?
Right now, we're actually doing a Bill Grave Cinema. We'll be looking to do it.
And where across the street? Because Beryl uses the turn lane. Okay, and I don't think that's the optimal situation. So I don't want you to repeat that. And so what are you going to do?
Go back to the slide up there. So that's actually one of the things we're trying to
Car
solve.
carrier drivers
It's
make
literally-
really strange choices.
They're gonna pull in to the right and just go right around back, unload there and come back out.
Okay, and that the right-hand portion of the top T?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
that's where we're planning on
Okay.
building our carriers there.
Good. That business of unloading in the middle of Perry highways.
Almost certainly Beryl is not telling the driver to do that either. That's just.
Yeah, I can imagine.
My husband has not people doing that for years.
So you do it off-site and then drive them up individually to your,
Bill Grave Cinema.
Yeah.
well, off-site.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And then drive them up. Okay.
Just the last slide. I almost forgot that we had the last slide. So this just explains why we believe it's appropriate, is that the depth of the C3 rezone area requesting is consistent with the abutting Beryl property, that adequate buffers will be provided along the R2 areas to the east where we have existing vegetation and can add more. And the current eastern R2 property is landlocked, as we sort of talked about, how you really can't use it because its only access is through the existing C3. And the portion of the Toma properties R2 is also currently being used for C3 parking. And lastly, due to the 100-foot setback from R2, there will be no buildings in sort of the eastern half of our property. There's sort of a built-in mechanism through your ordinance to keep us toward the front,
Sorry.
buildings to the front.
Is there a requirement in our zoning that you can't access residential through a commercial roadway?
I would have to look. but that doesn't
The
immediately-
So it
difficult-
isn't landlocked.
the practical difficulty is that we
I'm
can't.
not talking practical, I'm just trying to understand your assertion that it's landlocked.
Yep.
And
It doesn't have frontage on Perry
it
Highway.
doesn't,
So you
it
would
has
have to,
access, it has a road.
it can't have an access. It has to have frontage to be a legal lot.
I guess
Are you saying Ein House is not a road that you could build off of?
We don't, under the original application, we don't own Nine House.
I'm talking about the remaining R2 property.
I think what he's getting at is kind of something that I think maybe Brendan, you had pointed out earlier, that you can't have two primary structures on this lot. So in theory, if somebody wanted to develop it, the largest lot as residential, they would need to subdivide it, which would then cause the property to become landlocked.
I just want to understand. So what you're saying there, I'm sorry, I misinterpreted it. You're saying the R2 property currently held by Schultz, not the R2 property in general.
Correct.
Okay, sorry.
Yes. No, my mistake for not making it clear.
I got a quick question. Do we have written permission from the current landowner because we're pre-closing for the rezoning application?
So we have, what we usually take is an agreement of sale of some sort. So I did receive in the updated package, yesterday, there's a letter that's signed from the Ein House property owner that says basically like, this is an agreement.
Yeah, we have submitted the purchase agreements with the original Toma, which is 2 parcels. And today we submitted it for the other 3 parcels.
Yeah.
Yesterday, today, whatever.
Yes,
it was.
yeah,
Whenever.
give me a couple things in the last 24 hours, so.
Well, I didn't get that until
Right, I mean, I saw it,
yesterday.
it was December 4th, it's true, so.
That It just came in.
Because that was the first thing. that
Any other comments?
I get the C3 and the difficulties associated with split zoning of the lot. I get that. I understand the board EV push and the desire to have that segregated from the existing dealership. I get that. The thing that gives me the most hang up is just a lot of asphalt. And look, it is what it is, and you identify the plans as you see them necessary. But it's just a lot of pavement for me that I just have a hard time with a lot of that much pavement based on the buildings, the use, etc. Granted, there's a lot of pavement all around there. But that's the thing that jumps out at me as not a head scratcher, but a boy. There was a way to not have all the parking spots that maybe Starbucks should have.
We're renting time to Starbucks, by the way.
Just,
Well, yeah.
When they go from rave up there, you just send them back down. Chevy.
Can I, and I apologize, I should know the answer, but I don't. What is the allowed impervious cover in the
I'd have to look it up.
C3 zoning district? So
I don't know.
I think you have already set a standard for that, and if my plan has exceeded that, then obviously we'll be required to reduce that down.
Well, and the other thing that I would wonder is, there has to be some sort of significant stormwater management from this.
Yes.
So either it's gonna be all underground and tanks, which holy heck, that's expensive.
Yes.
Or you're putting a retention pond in
Yes.
somewhere.
That's gonna reduce some of our.
Yes.
Yeah, so which I would hope would be at the back of the lot
Right.
to get
Plan will
some
fit like
extra
this. Yeah.
buffering. But I mean, I don't know enough technical detail to be like, oh yeah, they'll put it here and it'll be this big. But my assumption is you don't want to pay to put an entire vault of detention tanks under the parking. Okay, there's a shrug.
Well,
Cars are getting pricey
it's-
these days, so
yeah, and I shrug because
you don't know yet.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I really don't know. Your point is correct, that it's very expensive to go underground,
Mhm.
but it's also very expensive to buy this property.
Mm.
And so there is a point at which it does make sense to go underground. Otherwise, or maybe a combination of some underground and some above ground, rain gardens type facilities. as you say, shorten up the tail to the right, build something back there, and then can't get the water from the front to go back there, but I could probably put something underground out front. You know, I have to do something.
Yep.
So,
Okay. Other comments? Interesting proposition. Thank you for
thank you. I
presenting it.
assume we table or we just,
Yeah,
is
so.
that necessary or we just come back next month?
I mean, I think the way that I'm gonna treat it procedurally is that basically the application has been amended sufficiently that it's essentially a new application in
Perfect.
January. But again, I figured what the heck, we might as well get the discussion started because these things usually take us 2 meetings anyway, so.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good. Well, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Same to you. Thank you.
We'll see you at the first of the year.
Sorry, GM, I almost got you home early. Right,
All right, what's left? The Saldo zoning Saldo modernization project? Discussion?
yeah, so, well, distribution, yeah, as usual. You've got the next 2 sections, well, 3, I guess this time actually,
Oh, and it
in,
was,
in your Dropbox.
I didn't see it.
This
I didn't
is,
see it.
I saw a couple. Were there 3?
there's, well, so there are 2 files, but there are 3 chapters. So the first file, you know, you've typically, and let me just double check the Dropbox, make sure everything that I think is there.
Yeah, it wasn't in the first
So-
one. Is it in an amended one or something?
No, it should be in this
I-
folder that's called zoning saldo drafts. Can you?
I didn't see
I
it.
don't have a zoning Seldo drafts in mine unless
saw
you're
it.
going.
I
through
saw it.
mine.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's,
Yeah.
let me look at your tablets when we adjourn here, but in theory, it should be there, and if not, I'll make sure that you get the files directly. But so there's the folder, zoning saldo drafts, what should be in there
Oh,
is,
there it is.
okay, good.
It wasn't there earlier.
I uploaded article 1301 and 1306 on November 30th.
Okay.
The
Right.
rest of the stuff showed up on December 2nd. So anyway, 1301 and 1306 is the administrative and the definitions chapters for zoning. I probably said previously that there were only 6 sections. I'm sorry, I didn't realize we were breaking definitions out into their own section, but I mean, the length is the same. So there's that, and then what is going to be labeled as part 11, because our code just mysteriously doesn't have any 1100s codes. Actually kind of worked out great for us because your saldo should not be in the same article as your zoning with the way that we've done it. We don't have a unified development ordinance. So since that section is just sitting vacant, that will become the saldo. So part 11 is what that's labeled. There's also, as usual, the instruction PDF. Based on some of the prior discussions we've had with other distributions, I did call out specifically in that instruction PDF, the sections that are pretty much like, for those who are really interested in getting your leads view, I know you will be. You read as much as you want, but for those that are trying to make efficient use of their time, about the first 40 pages of the saldo is mostly language that has to be carried over from the MPC, like the way that we have laid out those policies and procedures. Some of them are codifying just administrative functions that if it's not broken, don't fix it. But most of it is the MPC says you have to have these types of plans and this is how much time you get to review them.
So
You
the
just
first 40
restate that.
pages are kind of a given.
Yeah.
How many pages total? in that
It's
Saldo?
for the saldo, it's about 100.
There's
So that one's a
50
little
or 60 pages that you could review in
Yes,
theory.
and that's got buffering, lighting, you know, open space requirements. All of that stuff is gonna be in that last 60 pages. Like I said, welcome to offer comments on whatever you want, but if you're trying to be choosy, focus on that.
What's the expectation for comments?
So we're still.
That's what it feels.
No, hey, look, we gotta keep the project on track. I mean, it is what it is. So what we have set is the typical 2-week deadline. However, for those of you who have the time to really dig into it ahead of time, you know, I'm understanding that this is an undertaking because I have to read this thing too. And yeah, it's been more than a few evenings. But I am having my marathon session with our consultants on December 14th. So I think it's the 14th. Yeah, it's the Wednesday of next week. That's when everybody was available. So if you can take a crack at
Week from
anything
tomorrow.
by the 14th and send it to me, even if you're not done, you know, still turn everything in by the 2-week deadline, but I'd welcome anything that you can get to me by next Wednesday, because that's the day we were able to block off to do major
Are
edits.
the definitions open to comment?
Yes, I mean, they all are. So
Okay.
this is.
Well, you said the first 40 pages.
That's of the Saldo.
Okay.
So the definitions for
Okay.
the zoning, the Saldo definitions are brief and they're embedded in Saldo. And I think they may be in that first 40 pages, so do take a look if you're really interested, but for the zoning side, that's 1306. That whole section is much shorter than the Saldo itself. Also, again, in that administrative chapter of the zoning, that is codifying a lot of things that are just administrative functions that never come before the planning commission, like what you have to submit for a building permit, because building zoning permits are mostly administrative in nature. So if you're looking to skim or be efficient, definition section, back 60 pages of the Saldo are going to be your focus areas. But go wild as much as you want.
So it looks like most of section 1301 is also.
That's the zoning
is that-
administrative.
Yeah,
part.
it's that
Yes.
for administration. I'm
Yes.
sorry. I heard the Saldo, but I didn't hear the.
Right,
zoning.
right. Yeah, that's gonna be a lot of little tweaky building permit things, stuff that we just have to recodify here.
So have any of the definitions been updated from the initial packet that we saw?
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't have the time to review what we distributed, so I'm not sure.
Could be making the same
Um,
comments again.
Right, so if it looks exactly the same, assume that we've heard it. There were some comments that I got with those selected definitions that in the sections will define XYZ word. Generally speaking, if we didn't add it in this definition section, it's because it's a common dictionary term and it is not typical practice to define a common dictionary term, like, I don't know, inclusive or something like that's a word that's regular in the English language. It's not technical. So those are not going to be added to the definition section. They should be specific and technical in nature if they are in it.
So before I go and make all the same comments again, are we identifying in some way in the text terminology that we've defined? Are we highlighting it? Are we making it all caps? Are we making it initial caps?
We're for certain, I'd have to go back and look through, but for the most part, things like permit, applicant, plan, like those are capital, first letter capital.
Okay, I'm thinking like building, accessory building, sign.
From what I've seen, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's extremely helpful for
Yes,
review.
we didn't stick with the large caps because there were some sections that frankly, like I personally had trouble reading.
As long as we're identifying.
But we tried to capitalize the first letter of the word.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I think we're all pretty tired and ready to go home, but if you have specific questions, hit me now.
No. I had several questions on some of the definitions, but I'll make those comments
Yeah,
when I.
and we will be having Carolyn, who you've met her a couple times over Zoom, she's gonna be zooming in again,
No.
but she is here to buckle down in January and really tease out all of those burning questions that you may have. So, I know we've got quite a few plans that carried over. Let's keep that in mind next month, that we want to be thorough but efficient, and this is gonna
So
be
we
a
won't,
long
we won't
discussion.
see the results of our comments until then. Of any of our comments.
We'll see. I mean, we're gonna try to get things out, but given where it's falling in the holidays.
But basically, we won't see the
Yeah.
results of our comments until then. And then it's going to be drinking from a fire hose.
I mean, maybe so I have, like I said, my marathon work session next week. If there's anything we can get finalized from that out to you, we will distribute it ahead of the holiday. I just don't want to make any promises because I
understand.
know
I understand.
our
It's a tough
consultant
time.
is not working the last week of the year and I don't know.
Okay.
So.
Understood.
But we'll try and get you guys as much as we can, as quickly as we can.
Sandy with nice big word.
Yeah, like super, I know that's how everybody wants to spend Christmas Eve. But yeah, so let me know if you have any questions. Look forward to your comments. Appreciate all the work everybody's put in so far.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is number 7, approval of November 1, 2022 minutes. Any changes, comments, edits that people want to make? Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the minutes of November?
So moved.
Shelley moved. Sean second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. No, it approved. It wins approval. And any general public comment on anything? Doesn't sound like it.
It's just us.
Just us. Okay. We are adjourned.
No, wait, no, I need a motion.
I will move.
I'll second.
That we adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It wins. We are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.